The story begins at Delan Royal Academy, inside an unnamed classroom, where the teacher passionately delivers his lecture to the students. Everyone, this truly is the age of heroes. It's been 5,000 years since the first heroic chronicles appeared in the world. During that time, the mortal realm underwent numerous transformations, just like how Delan Royal Academy was chosen as the venue for this year's Lumern entrance exam. Among you, there will certainly be those who pass the exam and earn a place in the heroic chronicles. I believe heroes of the future are here, right among us. To achieve that, you must. The teacher's enthusiastic lecture is suddenly interrupted by a loud noise that stops him mid-sentence, leaving him visibly irritated. Pay attention in class. He shifts his gaze toward a white-haired student dozing off at his desk. The noise was caused by the boy's face hitting the table out of sheer sleepiness. Leo, if you think you know everything, then let me ask you, what rituals were performed 5,000 years ago to declare someone a hero? Leo, the young boy, scratches his head as he rises to his feet, responding, well, basically, if you make a name for yourself, people will naturally respect you. This is Leo Plav, 15 years old, a member of the Plav family. On the opposite side, the teacher, hearing this answer, feels his blood pressure steadily rising. But, as if accustomed to such responses, he sighs deeply and turns to the rest of the class. Anyone else want to try? In response, a red-haired student sitting near Leo raises his hand and answers. In ancient times, there was no way to gain divine recognition. Heroes were chosen through sacred rituals, like the blood ritual. Finishing his response, the teacher showers him with praise. Excellent. Truly the greatest magical prodigy of our kingdom, Gulliver Tradin. After pausing briefly, the teacher continued to motivate the class. We have high hopes for this year's Lumern entrance exam. Uninterested in these words, our protagonist Leo, having been jolted awake from being questioned earlier, opened the book in front of him and began to ponder. Back then, meeting the gods was easy. The sacred rituals honored the great heroes who fought against Erebos. The gods bestowed a miracle upon the mortal realm, the heroic chronicles. But why do they treat me like I'm invisible? As these thoughts crossed his mind, he closed the book with a sigh of boredom. Special note, this is Kyle, the great hero reborn, but currently in a state of being forgotten by all. While Leo was still lost in thought, a commotion suddenly erupted as students rushed to the window, craning their necks to see outside. Curiosity got the better of him. They're here. Where? Look, over there. It's the crest of the Zerdinger family. How incredible. That's Celia Zerdinger. The students' excitement echoed like the shouts of fans spotting a celebrity. Outside in the hallway, a young girl flanked by soldiers marched forward with calm determination. Moments later, an announcement rang through the classrooms. Attention, all students. Please gather in the main hall without exception. The Zerdinger family is visiting our school. Hearing this, Leo rose from his seat. Tradin, the red-haired boy, smirked teasingly. Leo, are you planning to impress the Zerdinger family? Do you think they'll notice you? Leo responded with a glance that could only be described as looking at a fool. I'm going home. I have no interest in this nonsense. Unlike you. Without hesitation, he turned and walked straight out the door. Behind him, Tradin flushed with both embarrassment and irritation. I'm not interested either. I just want to see Celia Zerdinger as a rival, he shouted, only to be met with a dismissive wave from Leo. I'm serious. Time skipped forward, transitioning to a training ground where Leo gripped a wooden sword, preparing to practice. Even if I don't neglect physical training, my body is definitely better this time around, he murmured to himself. His musings were interrupted by a voice. What are you so deep in thought about? Before the words had fully settled, a woman appeared before him, her figure cutting through the air as she swung her sword with fierce precision. Her eyes gleamed as though staring down a mortal enemy. Leo had no time for questions. Instinctively, he raised his wooden sword to block her strike. Leo was about to explain a few things when the woman in front of him cut him off. It's been a while since I practiced swordplay. You can't enter Lumern with just mediocre talent. This will be your final test. With those words, she raised her sword and lunged forward, attacking him again. The weight of her blow made Leo clench his teeth as he struggled to parry. Across from him, the lady noticed his trembling body after just one strike. Should I go a little harder? She teased. She began increasing the force of her swings, her speed also rising a notch, forcing Leo to strain himself to the limit just to keep up. In mere seconds, his breath came in heavy, exhausted gasps. Isn't this a bit too much, Mom? Leo grumbled. His complaints, however, had no effect on his mother. Instead, she even scolded him. If you have time to talk in the middle of a fight, you aren't focused, she replied, deflecting all his moves. What are you mumbling about? With that, she surged forward again, her power slicing through the air with terrifying speed. But as she unleashed the strike, her eyes widened in regret. Oh no, I used too much force. If Leo can't dodge, panic filled her thoughts. Yet, just as disaster seemed inevitable, Leo tilted his head calmly to one side, dodging the attack at the last possible moment. Then, without wasting a second, he flicked his wooden sword to her throat. Are you all right, Mom? He asked softly. His mother froze in place, stunned at her simple yet decisive defeat. She stared at him, wondering how deep his talent truly went. 2 seconds passed in silence before she dusted herself off and sat upright. Leo, you're still planning to attend Lumern, aren't you? Lumern Academy, the Human Hero Academy. One of 4 such institutions across the races that recorded the heroic chronicles. It was the place where one's chances of leaving behind legendary feats were the highest. Leo thought to himself. He nodded firmly. Yes, of course. Seeing his resolve, his mother smiled. The Zerdinger family is visiting Delan and staying at our estate. The Zerdinger family? At our home? Leo's voice brimmed with curiosity. That's right. While I'm not thrilled about it, I'll ask Viscount Z Zerdinger to teach you the Zerdinger aura technique. With it, you'll be strong enough to compete in next year's Lumern entrance exam. She ruffled his hair affectionately, completely unaware that her words merely made Leo chuckle inwardly. Mom, but I'm planning to enter this year, he thought with a smirk. Time passed quickly, transitioning to the front of the Zerdinger estate. Just as Leo's mother had mentioned, members of the Zerdinger family had arrived. From a luxurious black carriage, the girl named Celia gracefully stepped out, still pondering. Why am I even here? Why did Uncle choose to stay in a place like this? Why not rent an entire hotel? I just want to focus on the Lumern entrance exam. Why do we have to come to such a small family? Her thoughts echoed in her mind. Beside her, her Uncle Z suddenly spoke. Aren't you curious about Leo, the one who claimed to have no interest in the Zerdinger family? Celia arrogantly flicked her hair and responded with a sneer. Well, anyone training to be a knight who doesn't know how to use the Zerdinger aura isn't worth watching, right? My opinion's a little different. Z's whispered. The two then greeted the hosts of the estate. It's an honor to meet you, both of them bowed politely. Welcome, Z Zerdinger, the lady responded. She introduced herself as Raina Plav, the wife of the Plav family, and the man standing beside her was Dade Plav, the head of the Plav family. Say hello, Celia, Ziz reminded her. Celia calmly placed her hand on her chest and introduced herself. I'm Celia Zerdinger. I look forward to your care. It's a pleasure to meet you. Reina smiled warmly, thinking to herself, this girl is just like her father and uncle. However, when Celia took a closer look at Reina, her eyes widened for a moment. Wait a minute, black hair, red eyes, could she be from the Zerdinger family too? She wondered quietly, and as if reading her thoughts, Ziz nodded and explained. Raina Plav, she's your aunt. The scene shifted to the guest room, where Raina and Ziz were enjoying tea and chatting cheerfully. At this moment, Ziz was talking about his recent visit to the school where Leo was studying. We stopped by Royal Academy Delan. It was crowded with all the students gathering, but I heard Leo said he wasn't interested in us and went home. Hearing this, Raina laughed heartily. The mighty Zerdinger family reputation seems disappointing if that bothered him. If it upset you, I apologize on my son's behalf. He's just focused on his training. Ziz, curious, asked. What kind of child is Leo? Raina affirmed. Leo possesses a talent that's almost unbelievable. Upon hearing this, Z's expression changed, and he asked sternly, do you really believe Leo is worthy of inheriting the Zerdinger flame? Not because he's my son, but because I truly believe he's more than worthy. Raina confirmed. Z smiled. If you're saying that, then I'm looking forward to it. However, I'll need to personally assess the boy's potential. The scene quickly shifts to Leo, who was sitting cross-legged, appearing to be in deep concentration, as if meditating. At that moment, the right wrist of his hand began to flicker with a soft glow. Leo opened his eyes wide and whispered to himself. Finally, the vessel to hold everything is complete. He continued. The reason I haven't learned the aura until now is because when a person accepts it, the body naturally adapts to that type of aura, losing the opportunity to accumulate mana and spiritual strength. In my previous life, if I had mastered the powers and their essence more perfectly, if I had handled everything more precisely, I might not have left behind traces of my talents. This time, I'll master it completely. First, starting with the aura. Before he could go further, a voice called out from behind him. Are you Leo Plav? Leo turned around in surprise to see none other than Celia standing there. When she noticed he was paying attention to her, she unexpectedly smiled and said, from what I can see, your foundation is quite solid. I'll teach you swordsmanship. How about it? Leo, however, wasn't in a rush to agree. He asked back, who are you? Celia proudly introduced herself. I'm Celia Zerdinger, known as the Sword Maiden across the world. Leo raised an eyebrow and replied, is that so? Thanks for the offer, but I have no intention of being taught by someone weaker than me. Celia's mouth fell open in disbelief at his response. You're saying you're stronger than me? She asked, her face full of disbelief. Leo responded calmly. Well, in a life or death battle, you might be stronger, because I don't use the aura. But if it's a pure sword fight, that's a different story. Celia's face grew angry, and she glanced over at the weapons laid to the side. She picked up one of the swords and challenged Leo. All right then, if you're so confident, let's duel. With a smug smile, Celia thought to herself, so you think you're stronger just because you have the aura? I'll show you the reality check. She then set the terms. If I win, you'll be my servant for the week while you stay here. Leo raised an eyebrow and asked, what if I win? Celia, without hesitation, declared, if I lose, I'll be your servant. With that, the challenge was set. Leo quickly grabbed a wooden sword from the ground and said, let's start then. Leo, with a swift motion, charged forward, swinging his sword in a fierce, wind-cutting arc. However, Celia reacted just as quickly, raising her own sword to block the attack. The moment their blades collided, she felt a shift in the air, and in her mind, she thought, his speed isn't bad, but it's not enough. Without hesitation, she moved forward to continue her assault, but Leo mirrored her actions, attacking with a speed that caught her off guard. As their blades collided once again, Celia felt the force of Leo's strike, and it was as if she had been hit by a charging carriage. What kind of strength is this? She thought as she quickly jumped back to dissipate the impact. Her decision proved to be wise, as Leo's sword struck the ground, shattering the floor into countless fragments. Seeing Celia retreat, Leo pushed forward with relentless momentum, not allowing her the chance to counterattack. Before Celia could even react, Leo's sword was already coming toward her again. However, this time, Celia activated her aura, summoning a barrier of energy to block the blow. This is supposed to be a pure sword fight, Leo coldly remarked. I was just reacting instinctively. Celia weakly replied. Doesn't matter. I'll still win. Leo said nonchalantly, leaving Celia shocked by his calm confidence. The difference between having and not having the aura is like the difference between heaven and earth. She screamed inside her head. Leo, unfazed, simply asked, do you want to try that feeling? He then removed a bracelet from his wrist and threw it to the ground. Seeing the magical bracelet, Celia immediately recognized it as a Giatrong bracelet. This is insane, she thought, stunned by the sight. Without further explanation, Leo smiled lightly and charged at the energy barrier Celia had created, striking it with his wooden sword. The force of his strike was so great that the barrier shattered into pieces, leaving Celia in utter disbelief. What is this? So brutal. This crazy guy, she mentally screamed. Time quickly passed, and the scene shifted to Reina, who was strolling around with her younger brother. Suddenly, she spotted Leo up ahead. She called out to him. Leo, come over here and say hello. They're guests of our family. Leo calmly observed Ziz before lowering his head slightly and introducing himself. I am Leo Plav. Ziz extended his hand and replied warmly. I am Ziz Zerdinger, your uncle. As you might already know, it's a pleasure to meet you. He shook Leo's hand firmly, while Reina, standing nearby, asked, by the way, have you met Celia? Leo? At the mention of Celia, Leo's expression faltered for a moment as he glanced over at her, lying unconscious on a stretcher as knights carried her outside. Mississippi, what happened? Things escalated so quickly, one of the knights said in confusion. Seeing his niece in such a state, Ziz hurried over, demanding an explanation. The knight quickly provided the details, and Ziz, upon hearing the story, was astounded. He beat Celia without using his aura? Defeating Celia, that's impressive, he remarked, impressed by Leo's strength. However, Leo did not take pride in his victory. He knew Celia had underestimated him. Ziz then asked, what was the agreement between you two? Leo responded, the loser must serve the winner as a servant for a week. So Celia Zerdinger will be my servant for the week. Ziz, who had been smiling moments before, now looked dark at the mention of his niece being reduced to a servant. Promises are important, but Celia is a member of the Zerdinger family. You cannot make her serve as a servant. I want you to revoke this agreement. Instead, I'll offer you another reward, such as, before Ziz could finish, Leo interrupted. I refuse. This is a promise between Celia and me. As long as she bears the Zerdinger name, she must uphold her end of the deal. Ziz, trying to persuade Leo, suggested, what if I teach you the Zerdinger family's aura technique? However, Leo, knowing that he already had a vast array of superior techniques from his previous life, simply chuckled. An aura technique to cover up your niece's failure doesn't seem worth my time, he said with a smirk. Ziz, growing more irritated from being continuously rejected, glared at Leo. Leo Plav, are you declaring that you'll have a direct member of the Zerdinger family as your servant and that our aura technique is worthless? Yes, that's right. Leo replied confidently, not the slightest bit intimidated. Ziz's expression shifted from frustration to amusement. Don't you think your statement was a bit hasty? Leo, remaining calm, explained, I have no intention of insulting the Zerdinger family. But if you were to offer me the aura technique as a reward for defeating Celia, I would accept it. However, the fact that you offer it as a way to cover up Celia's loss suggests you believe she would not have lost if she had been at her best. But even if she fought seriously, I would still have won, Leo said, his voice filled with unwavering confidence. Ziz's interest in Leo grew as he saw the determination in his eyes. Rejecting the reward because you don't like my attitude? Truly interesting. If the Zerdinger family had a child like this. Ziz, after thinking for a moment, waved his hand to signal the knights to take Celia to the servants' quarters so she could fulfill her promise. Turning to Leo, he said, Leo, just call me uncle. Yes, uncle, Leo responded, nodding respectfully, happy to comply with the request. Once Leo left, Ziz no longer saw the need to test Leo's potential. Sister, you asked me to teach Leo the Zerdinger family's aura technique, right? I think I will convince my elder brother to let Leo learn the Phoenix Breath. The scene shifted to the following morning. In Leo's bedroom, Celia stood, dressed in a maid's outfit, her face flushed red with embarrassment. Gritting her teeth, she reluctantly declared, for 1 week, I will serve as the servant of young Master Leo. I am Celia. Her words echoed the weight of the promise she had to honor, though it was clear she wasn't happy with the situation. In the room, Leo was deeply focused on reading his book. When he heard a call, he glanced at the girl, evaluated her, and nodded, saying, "It suits you very well. The simple maid outfit combined with your elegant style. This combination is truly..." His tone had a slight insinuation, causing Celia to become so furious that her whole body trembled. "I know I'm beautiful, but saying it like that is just ridiculous." No, I didn't mean to offend you," Leo replied. "I have a friend, someone who always praises beauty excessively. I might have unconsciously been influenced by them," Leo said, then sighed as he recalled the words of a close friend from his past life, "When peace comes to the world, I will dedicate my life to spreading beauty to everyone." That was what this teammate of his always said. Ahead of him, Celia heard this and calmed down a little. A friend who truly loves beauty must be wonderful. The issue was that they were so sincere. Leo murmured to himself in his heart, remembering a past event when his teammate, who adored beauty, suggested to two girls in their team to pose as models for a painting, though risen at, stern and with a more graceful demeanor than anyone, and Luna, for the sake of art, had both reacted by saying, "Could you pose nude for me?" I've even brought my sketchbook, causing an ensuing beating from the two girls in the team. Back to Celia. Seeing Leo clutching his book so tightly, she was a bit curious. "Is that book some kind of special training manual?" she asked. "What book?" Leo looked down at the book in his hands and casually said, "Oh, this one? I read it a lot when I was younger. It's The Origin of Heroes." Upon hearing this, Celia was taken aback because she recognized it as a fairy tale. Yet Leo was already 15 years old. She then started walking forward, looking at the books on the shelf, and remarked, "It seems you really like The Origin of Heroes. Even scholars studying great heroes can't compare to you." She was impressed by the number of books Leo had collected. However, Leo simply said, "I just happen to collect them." In response, Celia reached out and grabbed the book, muttering, "But there are a lot of books about Kyle in here." To this, Leo's face showed a hint of nostalgia as he replied, "Among the feats of great heroes, those with unclear accomplishments, I think they might belong to him." Contrary to his thoughts, Celia shook her head, denying it. He must be a fraud trying to steal the achievements of real heroes. That was the common belief. And of course, I think the same. Saying that, she placed the book back on the chair. "So, you think that about me?" Leo whispered softly. "What?" Celia asked, not catching his quiet words. However, Leo wasn't foolish enough to repeat himself, and instead, he shifted the topic. "Well then, let's start training after breakfast." Turning to Celia, after hearing Leo's words, a gleam appeared in her eyes as she cautiously asked, "Young master, if possible, could I train with you?" As she spoke, she secretly chuckled to herself. "I want to uncover the secret of your strength." In response to her question, Leo agreed without hesitation, as he had no secrets about his own power. "It will be tough to keep up," he said with a hint of disdain, which made Celia shout in anger, "I am Zerdinger." However, after starting the training with Leo, Celia soon realized just how overwhelming it was. Not long into it, she was drenched in sweat, sitting and breathing heavily from exhaustion. Seeing her in this state, Leo calmly commented, "When your stamina reaches its limit, your reflexes slow down, and your movements become sloppy. You'll end up exposing your back like this." Turning toward Celia, she glared at him with suspicion. "You're calling this training? Pushing your body to this extreme?" "Yes," Leo replied. "You kids seem too weak." He shook his head in disapproval. For Leo, after 50 years of development, compared to the past, his martial skills had improved, but physical training was often neglected. The aura was the optimized power of the body, and improving physical strength ultimately enhanced the aura. However, people didn't value physical training enough. After taking a brief rest, Celia struggled to get back on her feet to attack again, muttering, "Don't underestimate me, you damn white-haired bastard." With that, she charged at Leo. However, with her slow movements, Leo simply swung his sword once, easily sending Celia flying far away. By this point, Celia was on the verge of tears, exclaiming, Why can't I win?" Seeing this, Leo calmly walked toward her and responded, "It's frustrating, isn't it? Here, take this." As he spoke, he handed Celia a heavy bracelet. The moment she touched it, her hands were immediately pressed down by the weight, causing them to sink toward the ground. "This is a gravity-enchanted bracelet. From tomorrow on, wear it while training," Leo said with a sly smile, enjoying seeing someone else suffer alongside him. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to an open field where the two young people continued their training. Meanwhile, Uncle Z's watched them silently from behind. He believed that this would be a good experience for Celia before she entered Lumern. Testing her pride first wouldn't be a bad thing. With that thought in mind, he called out to Leo, "Leo, I plan to ask the head of the family to have you inherit the Phoenix Breath technique." On the opposite side, hearing Z's words, Leo was taken aback. He had heard of the Phoenix Breath technique before. It was the origin of all aura techniques within the Zerdinger family. "I heard that only those recognized by the family can inherit it," Leo thought to himself. Meanwhile, Celia immediately turned around to refute, saying, "Father won't agree so easily." In response, Ziz nodded and explained. Correct. That's why there will be a condition attached. You must pass this year's Lumen entrance exam. Upon hearing the condition, Celia became worried and fearful for Leo. What? The Lumen entrance exam is a real combat test. You know, someone like Leo, who doesn't even know how to use aura, will be at great risk if he participates. As for Leo, upon hearing the condition, he was not scared. Instead, he felt an indescribable excitement bubbling inside him. Real combat? Right. I guess I don't have much of a choice, he thought. Ziz noticed Leo's quiet contemplation and asked, what do you think about that, Leo? Leo gave him a confident nod and replied, my parents said they would respect my decision, so I'll participate. Ziz wasn't surprised by Leo's answer. As expected, the boy had already decided to join the entrance exam this year. With this added motivation, Leo dove back into his training. We've rested long enough. Let's continue, he said, returning to his running exercises. Who says I can't keep up? Celia yelled out loud. Time quickly passed, and a week later, the scene shifted to Delan Academy. It was the day of the Lumen entrance exam, and the place was already crowded with people eager to take the test. As expected, Celia's appearance immediately caught the attention of those around her. Isn't that Celia Zerdinger? How amazing to see the Sword Maiden in person. Who's that beside her? Curious whispers filled the air. Meanwhile, Celia glanced at Leo and asked, are you nervous, young master? No, Leo replied calmly, then teasingly added, but shouldn't you correct the way you speak? The sudden remark startled Celia. Just then, a voice called out from behind them, Miss Celia. Both of them turned toward the sound and saw none other than their red-haired friend, Traden, standing there. Upon seeing Leo next to Celia, Traden was also taken aback. Leo Plav? What are you doing here? And you don't even know how to use aura? Traden asked, then quickly turned to Celia and greeted her. Miss Celia, it's great to see you. How have you been? On the opposite side, both Leo and Celia looked at Traden with expressions as if they were staring at a fool, making Traden feel awkward and unsure of what to say next. Eventually, he introduced himself. I am Gulliver Traden. I greeted you when you visited the school last time. I'm the greatest magical genius of D-Land. Turning to Celia, before the red-haired youth could finish his sentence, she interrupted him, saying, sorry, but I don't remember you at all. Well, goodbye, as she grabbed Leo's hand and began to walk away. However, just at that moment, another voice rang out loudly. Celia, long time no see. The voice was so loud that it drew the attention of everyone in the hall. The owners of this voice were a young brother and sister, both of whom had striking silver hair. The older brother, named Abad Llewellyn, was 16 years old, and his younger sister, Chelsea Llewellyn, was 14. Both of them hailed from the Llewellyn family. Who are they? Leo asked curiously. Seeing Celia's reaction, she unconsciously clenched her hand and explained. They are the Llewellyn siblings, from the noble hero family of the Gold Empire. They are members of the Llewellyn family, and they're also participating in this exam. So we can't lose. Leo, the Zerdinger family losing to the Llewellyn family is unacceptable. Leo responded innocently. But I'm from the Plav family. Celia's eyes sharpened as she continued. That doesn't change the fact that we must win. Soon, the Llewellyn siblings moved toward Celia and greeted her again. It's been a while. Celia, Abad said. In response, Celia nodded. Yes, it's been a while. Abad Llewellyn. Who is this beside you? Abad looked at Leo and asked. Who is this with you? Celia replied, raising her voice slightly. He is a member of the Marquis family from the Kingdom of Delrod. Leo Plav, from the Plav family. Upon hearing this, Chelsea, the younger sister, immediately lost interest in Leo. Just an ordinary person, she said coldly, while Abad showed a similar attitude. After exchanging greetings, the siblings quickly walked off, with Chelsea responding to her brother's command. Celia, the top spot will definitely be mine. Let's go. Chelsea. Yes, brother. Chelsea answered. Seeing their arrogant behavior, Celia became irritated and muttered, those troublesome people. I'll definitely beat them. Before she could finish her sentence, a loud voice echoed, catching everyone's attention. Looking up at the platform, a young teacher appeared, and it seemed like everyone was gathered. I am Albi, the teacher introduced himself. I'm Albi Geron, a professor at Lumen Academy. Upon hearing this name, Celia's face immediately changed, and she muttered in surprise. Could it be that Albi, the sorcerer of the evil eye? Looking at her surprised expression, Leo, curious, asked, who is that? Celia was even more surprised that Leo didn't know about the professor. You really don't know? He's a hero recorded in the heroic chronicles, she said with admiration, causing Leo to take the person more seriously. A hero of this age. The mana from his left eye must be the evil eye. Leo thought to himself as he observed Albi, noticing the continuous flow of energy from his left eye. Albi, sensing the attention, then began explaining the test. The tests will include fighting others and defeating monsters. Each person will participate in these two parts. I find this method rather troublesome, he said, casually setting fire to the papers in his hand, reducing them to ashes. Albi, with a calm demeanor, pulled a book from his coat pocket and began using his own magic, opening the heroic chronicles to the chapter titled, The Beginning, the Monster Forest. As he did, a massive magic circle appeared beneath everyone's feet, emitting a powerful energy. Albi then addressed the group from above, his voice cold and commanding. I will not tolerate any delay. I'll combine everything and proceed in one go. Leo, watching all of this unfold, was reminded of what he had learned about the heroic chronicles. It wasn't just a simple record, its true value lay in preserving the challenges faced by past heroes and recreating the worlds those heroes lived in. Furthermore, if one could conquer a hero's world, they could inherit the power of the heroes who had come before. This system was essentially a method for training new heroes. Back in the present, the scene shifted, and the students found themselves in a dark, eerie forest. Albi's voice echoed from the sky, announcing, "This is the monster forest. The test is about survival. You may cooperate or eliminate each other, do whatever you must to survive. If you wish to quit or break the orb you're holding to return, that's your only way out." After his words, Albi's voice faded away, leaving the group in confusion. As the group tried to process their situation, Leo recognized the place. This place is just like it was before, he thought, sensing something familiar in the forest. Before the Beast Queen Silatona ruined it, this was once the forest of the elves. Around them, a few of the weaker students began to panic. "I want to go home," one student cried out. "It's just an illusion." "Stop being so weak," another muttered. However, Leo, with his sharp focus, had a different perspective. "They're wrong," he thought. "Even though this world is a recreation from Albi's memories, everything that happens here is real. If we're in danger, we will die for real." Just as he was thinking this, a green glowing arrow shot out of the forest, heading straight for Leo. Thanks to his heightened alertness, he was able to dodge it in time. The archer, however, wasn't a stranger, it was Chelsea. Seeing Leo avoid her arrow, Chelsea stepped forward, her voice dripping with confidence. "We've met before, right? It'll be fun to take down someone from the Zerdinger family." Leo, realizing that she was targeting him, quickly reminded her, "I'm from the Plav family. But you were with Celia earlier." Chelsea retorted loudly. Without wasting any time, she cast her wind magic, summoning an energy scythe in her hand, ready to attack again. With his experience, Leo was slightly surprised by Chelsea's skill. That's a spell that didn't exist in the past. But essentially, it hasn't changed, he thought to himself as he gripped his sword, ready for any situation. Chelsea, seeing that Leo remained calm even with her standing in front of him, seemed slightly frustrated. With a sigh, she remarked, "Humph, you're still so calm even though I'm right here," and then spun her energy scythe before throwing it forward like a saw blade. However, Leo easily deflected the attack with a simple swing of his sword, sending the scythe flying backward. Seeing him handle it so effortlessly, Chelsea's expression changed slightly. "He's not bad, but I can't sense any aura being used. Is that a difficult to detect field attribute?" she wondered inwardly. Meanwhile, Leo, not missing a beat, suggested, "That attack was too simple. Why don't we cooperate instead? This test tends to reward the survivors the most. As a mage, wouldn't it be useful to have a swordsman by your side?" He smiled, trying to persuade her. Unfortunately for him, his words fell on deaf ears. "Heh, too bad. I'm a combat mage," Chelsea replied, sounding a bit irritated. "And did you just call my attack simple?" she added. Whether Leo could sense her irritation was unclear, but he nonchalantly responded, "Did you hear me? With wind magic, that attack is too basic. As for its power, well, that's another story." Chelsea rolled her eyes in disbelief. "Are you lecturing me on magic? A direct descendant of the Llewellyn family," she scoffed, visibly annoyed. "Then let's see how you handle a simple attack," she declared, raising her staff and launching several wind blades and arrows directly at Leo. But as soon as she launched the attack, she realized that Leo had vanished from his position. Where did he go? "I can't sense any mana at all. Why?" she thought, feeling confused and disoriented. Before she could figure it out, Leo suddenly reappeared right in front of her and delivered a punch to her stomach, knocking her down to her knees. "So, should I politely ask you to cooperate now?" he said, before binding her to a nearby tree. With a mischievous grin on his face, he began to light a fire, showing a very different side to his usual calm demeanor. Time passed quickly until evening fell, at which point Chelsea began to awaken from her daze, finding herself tied to a wooden pole. Beneath her, a roaring fire crackled fiercely. The scene resembled a ritualistic sacrifice. "What is this?" Chelsea exclaimed in panic. Seeing her awake, Leo continued with his offer. "Are you willing to cooperate with me?" In response, Chelsea clenched her teeth in defiance, her expression filled with anger. "Never. I need no one but my brother." "Wind blade," she shouted, attempting to unleash her magic to sever the ropes binding her. However, a red miniature magic circle appeared on her wrist, sealing her powers and preventing her magic from activating. "This is a magic sealing array," Leo whispered calmly, "but since it requires significant mana, I can't maintain it for long." Hearing this, Chelsea scoffed, declaring that she could easily break such a spell. Yet Leo sneered coldly. "You think I'll let you concentrate?" As he spoke, flames crept closer to Chelsea, scorching part of her dress. "Wait, stop, it's too hot," she screamed. Still, Leo persisted, demanding her cooperation. With no other choice, Chelsea finally relented. "All right, I'll do it," she cried. Even then, Leo wasn't foolish enough to release her immediately. Instead, he made her swear on her family's honor. Fine. I swear. I swear on the honor of the Llewellyn family that I'll cooperate. Now stop. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she spoke. Watching her surrender, Leo grinned inwardly. That was too easy, she really is still a child, he mused before yanking the rope in his hand, causing Chelsea to fall. He caught her gently, his voice soft and warm as he said, I look forward to working with you, Mage of House Llewellyn. The scene then shifted outside. While the students battled within the trial, the instructors observed their progress via a monitoring screen to score and evaluate them. Professor Albee grew increasingly irritated the more he watched. Fools, choosing to compete rather than collaborate, how stupid. He sighed before adding, only 2 students grasped the true essence of this test, Celia Zertinger and Abad Llewellyn. The Empire's future looks promising indeed. The young professor gave a rare nod of approval as he watched the 2 work together to defeat a monster. Albee shifted his gaze to another screen and noticed Leo and Chelsea working together to fight a massive troll. Wait a second. Isn't that Leo Plov? What he did at the campfire earlier was strange. But convincing Chelsea Llewellyn to cooperate is already a major accomplishment. He doesn't have Celia or Abad's power or brilliance. But he's an unpredictable wild card, the young professor murmured with growing interest as he continued to observe Leo's progress. Back at the battlefront, though Chelsea had been coerced into cooperating with Leo, she couldn't help but admire his skills. Having a knight by your side is quite handy. Let me ask you something, what kind of aura are you using? I haven't sensed any mana from you this whole time, she asked. Her curiosity piqued. Leo didn't bother hiding the truth. I don't know how to use aura, he admitted bluntly. Chelsea stared at him in disbelief. What? How can you fight without an aura? The essence of things is what truly matters. Leo responded calmly. The same applies to wind magic. What do you think is its true essence? Instead of replying immediately, Chelsea cast a series of wind spells. Sharp blades of air materialized behind her, slicing a lurking monster that had been poised to ambush them. She smirked triumphantly. Talking about magic in front of a Llewellyn, how absurd. Leo, she scoffed. Leo showed no signs of irritation. Instead, he maintained his composed demeanor. I admire your strength, but your technique is all wrong, he remarked as he strode forward confidently. His calm, teacher-like stance made Chelsea grumble. You're unbelievable. Before she could continue her complaint, Leo suddenly stopped and signaled her to halt. Wait, stop, he whispered. Chelsea quickly realized the reason for his warning. Before them lay several desiccated corpses, dried up and withered as if mummified by time. Mummies, she muttered, frowning as she examined them. Leo's eyes narrowed. I've seen this before, he murmured. His expression grew more serious. Now I understand the key to passing this test, he thought to himself, his mind racing with realization. At that moment, Leo suddenly felt a hostile presence targeting him. With no time to think, he decisively lunged forward, grabbing Chelsea and pulling her aside. His quick action saved them both from an unseen attack. Moments later, several figures emerged from the distance. Too bad, I wanted to take out Chelsea Llewellyn first, a voice sneered. The speaker was Traden, a red-haired student who had allied with a group of other students to eliminate strong contenders. Once Chelsea is eliminated, the guy next to her is nothing special. All right, let's take them down together, Traden shouted, rallying his group to attack. Like a pack of rabid dogs, they charged in. But engaging Leo in close combat was a mistake. None of them could match his raw strength. In a swift, brutal move, Leo delivered a powerful punch that sent the first attacker sprawling on the ground like a lifeless doll. Seeing their comrade fall so easily, the others hesitated, fear creeping into their eyes. Support me, Chelsea, Leo called out. Ah? Why yes. Okay, she stammered, still shaken by the earlier danger. Meanwhile, Traden's group regained their composure. What are you doing? Attack, they screamed, throwing themselves at Leo again. What they didn't realize was that Traden himself had already fled, slipping away while his allies kept fighting. I can't lose here, he muttered to himself as he sprinted. I'll find another way. Elsewhere, Celia noticed Traden's figure darting away and chose a different path, eventually arriving where Leo and Chelsea stood. Scattered around them lay the unconscious bodies of Traden's group, defeated and motionless. Brother, Chelsea cried joyfully when she spotted Abad Llewellyn approaching. She rushed to him, throwing her arms around him in a relieved embrace. Abad gently patted her back. Chelsea, are you all right? Standing beside him, the swordswoman Celia smirked and asked curiously, how did you two end up together? Leo shrugged nonchalantly. I proposed a partnership. That stubborn girl wouldn't cooperate, so I had to convince her. His mischievous grin spoke volumes. Celia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. What are you planning this time, Leo? Without answering directly, Leo surprised everyone by helping the fallen students back to their feet one by one. Chelsea watched, puzzled. Why are you helping them up? She asked incredulously. In response to Chelsea's question, Leo calmly explained. Competition is no longer necessary. Now, we'll conquer this world together. The monster forest is behaving abnormally. Do you see those corpses? It's as if all the moisture was drained from their bodies. And that's not the only strange thing. Have you noticed how few monsters are around? Leo's casual observation made Celia pause, her eyes widening as realization struck. Now that you mention it, it's like something's been devouring them. There must be a high-level monster lurking, scaring the others into hiding. Llewellyn, the white-haired mage, nodded thoughtfully. I see. The first great triumph of the hero albeit was slaying a high-level monster, he mused. Just as he finished speaking, a wave of deadly intent crashed over them, suffocating and oppressive. Sweat beaded on their faces as fear gripped their hearts. So, it's here, Leo murmured, his eyes narrowing. Meanwhile, Traden was deeper in the forest, using a light spell to guide his way. His mind was fixed on a singular goal, one way or another. I'll eliminate you, Leo, he growled, determination blazing in his voice. Suddenly, a dark figure blocked his path, narrowing his eyes. Traden brought his staff closer to inspect the obstacle, only to stumble backward in horror when he realized it was a corpse. What the? He gasped, his heart pounding in his chest. Before he could react further, something wet and slimy dripped onto his staff from above. Curiosity got the better of him as he tilted his head up. It was a mistake. Above him, a monstrous spider loomed, its many eyes gleaming with hunger as it gazed down upon him, poised to strike. Outside the grand hall, a group of students, having ended the trial prematurely due to its dangers, gathered together and exchanged boastful tales. I took down about 15 or 16 monsters, a brown-haired boy exclaimed with enthusiasm. Same here, another student nodded proudly. Nearby, Professor Albee watched them with a face full of disappointment. 500. That's how many monsters have been defeated so far. Every single one of you failed, he muttered. Hearing this, a fellow professor gasped and rushed to speak. But Professor Albee, regardless of their performance, you still need to select about 100 students like the other regions do. Only 50 are left in the trial. Unmoved, Albee shook his head, his handsome features remaining firm. If they do not meet my standards, I'll fail them all. Headmaster Kallian entrusted me with this trial because of my judgment. He turned back to the monitoring screen, where Leo's actions were displayed. His expression shifted into curiosity. True heroes are only forged in adversity. Leo Plav, you've already sensed the anomaly in the forest. But will you survive this world? Back in the forest, Leo's group pressed onward through the darkness. Damn it. I can't see a thing, a long-haired student grumbled. Celia, leading the way, suddenly stopped and signaled them. Wait, there's something ahead. Prepare to fight. She concentrated mana into her sword, the blade emitting a soft crimson glow. In the dim light, they saw a figure resembling Celia restrained by some unknown force. What is that? Someone gasped. The one behind it is the real monster, Abad shouted, raising his hand to cast a spell. But before his magic took form, Leo stepped forward, stretching out his arm. Gulliver, snap out of it. Break the crystal now, Leo commanded. Traden, clutching a translucent crystal, gritted his teeth and crushed it. Instantly, his body turned into a burst of light, vanishing from the world. The monstrous spider screeched in fury as its prey slipped away at the last moment. With Traden gone, Abad unleashed his magic freely. Wind fangs, he roared. Countless sharp blades of wind surged forward, slicing into the giant spider. Blood gushed from its monstrous body, soaking the ground. However, despite the profuse bleeding, its wounds were healing visibly fast. Witnessing this incredible regeneration, the expressions on everyone's faces turned grim. Is this still not enough? One of them muttered in frustration. Just as I thought, this is the spider princess Tarantulia. Leo sighed inwardly, his heart sinking as he recognized the true nature of the monstrous creature. Meanwhile, a student wielding a large axe gripped his weapon tightly and charged forward with a roar. Damn it! Take this, he yelled, putting all his strength into the attack. Yet before his weapon could even touch the massive spider, one of its powerful legs swung mercilessly, sending him flying far into the distance like a ragdoll. As for Celia, the swordswoman, she had no time to worry about the fallen student. Stealing her resolve, she gritted her teeth and declared, I'll finish it in one blow. Solar strike. The moment the words left her mouth, a torrent of powerful energy surged into the tip of her sword, gathering every ounce of mana. She released a beam of blinding red light like a blazing laser cannon. It shot straight forward and pierced through the spider's head. But even as the attack landed with pinpoint precision, the sheer vitality of the spider was beyond belief. Despite having a gaping hole blasted through its forehead, the wound closed in mere seconds, as if nothing had happened. The impossible sight made her face go pale with shock. No way, Celia whispered in disbelief, seeing her most powerful strike fail. Abad, the mage, stepped forward confidently. The difference between a mage and a knight is like night and day. Watch this, he said with a smirk, calling forth a destructive wind spell. He unleashed gale blades, conjuring razor-sharp currents that spiraled with terrifying force toward the spider's massive body. Yet even this devastating magic was far from enough. The only effect was enraging the creature further. From the beginning, Abad had inflicted the most pain on it, making himself the prime target of its growing fury. Realizing this, Chelsea, his younger sister, quickly cast her own magic from behind, desperately attempting to protect her brother. Her timely intervention saved him from a deadly blow, leaving him with only a minor injury on his arm. Are you all right? Chelsea asked. Thanks, Chelsea, Abad replied. Meanwhile, the student wielding the axe, seeing that even Celia and Abad couldn't do anything to the monstrous creature, wore an expression of despair. What is this monster? He exclaimed in fear. Using his knowledge, Leo stepped forward to explain to the group. This is an unusual regenerative ability. It's the daughter of Salatna, the queen of Tartarus, a monster in the Erebos army that destroyed the fairy forest. Upon hearing this, everyone around turned to look at Leo with a mix of disbelief and confusion, as if they were looking at an alien. Meanwhile, the protagonist, Leo, was lost in his thoughts, recalling past memories. The mana in Albi's left eye is indeed the mana of the fairy king, Tarantula, who rules the cursed wild forest, destroyed the fairy forest and even ate the fairy king's arm in battle. I thought Luna had destroyed Tarantulia, but it seems the fairy king's right arm in its stomach saved its life. More accurately, the endless life energy from that hand, the ring of life. Turning back to the group, Leo noticed their renewed fighting spirit. If this monster is the key to the test, then I'll defeat it. Abad shouted. Who says that? Celia retorted. Then, both of them began relentlessly using their abilities, attacking the giant spider. However, seeing their actions, Leo knew this was futile. It will keep regenerating until your mana runs out. Leo coldly reminded them. What do you suggest? Then, Celia asked. And Leo replied that they needed to cooperate. Upon hearing Leo's suggestion, Abad bluntly refused. I refuse. I will be the one to get the highest score. No one else. Not if I can help it. Celia shouted in response. Leo, seeing that these two idiots kept arguing instead of assessing the situation, raised his voice. If we don't clear this hero world, we'll all be disqualified. Hearing this, both of them quickly realized the severity of the situation and immediately stopped their bickering. Then, Abad shared his thoughts. Even if we cooperate, it'll still take a lot of time to prepare an attack strong enough to defeat it instantly. But only Celia and I can hold the monster long enough. Upon hearing this, Celia fell silent. While the group was unsure of what to do next, Leo confidently stepped forward and took responsibility. I'll do it, he said with a face full of confidence. However, Celia didn't believe in this plan at all. What? Isn't that equivalent to suicide? She exclaimed. You don't even know how to use an aura field. I know, but I can still hold it off for 5 minutes. Leo said calmly, as if it weren't a big deal. From behind, the wizard Abad anxiously asked, what if the attack fails? After hearing this, Leo confidently replied, I don't think that'll happen, because fire and wind are always good allies. They work very well together. His words made Celia and Abad look at each other, seemingly having their own thoughts about it. Then, while they were still thinking, Leo dashed forward to attack the spider. He gripped his axe tightly and swung it directly at its mouth, causing the spider to let out a pained screech. Back to Leo. Seeing the monster's rapid recovery without much time passing, he thought to himself, just as I thought, this is the limit. What if I don't use the aura field? With that thought, to find a more effective way to stall, Leo called out to the wizard Chelsea behind him. Chelsea, use wind magic to blow all the weapons around me toward me. As he spoke, he quickly jumped to the side to avoid a giant spider leg that was about to strike him. Hearing his request, Chelsea, flustered, quickly reminded him, if you move that fast, you'll get hurt. Without time to explain, Leo firmly replied, I'll catch them. So don't worry. Just hurry up. What weapons? Chelsea asked. Any of them, Leo answered. Following his request, Chelsea swiftly used her wind magic, sending a weapon flying toward him. Leo, listening to the sound of the weapon's movement, could vaguely tell what it was. From the sound, either it's a curved short sword or a double-edged long sword, he thought. With that in mind, he pushed off the ground with all his strength and jumped into the air. As he did, he grabbed both weapons that were sent toward him, and then using the momentum from his descent, Leo performed a series of sword strikes, severing several of the giant spider's legs. However, the destruction he caused was brief, as the swords broke into pieces after only a few strikes. Seeing this, Leo immediately requested more weapons from Chelsea. Next, he shouted, and without him needing to say more, Chelsea expertly blew more weapons toward him. With this, Leo began to demonstrate his exceptional weapon skills, continuously attacking the giant spider so fast that it couldn't react in time. Chelsea, watching in awe, thought to herself, he looks like he's our age, but this scene feels like watching a war god in action. Meanwhile, Abad, witnessing this, also stopped underestimating Leo. So, he's not just some insignificant bug after all, he murmured to himself. Back to Leo, while dealing blow after blow to the massive spider. He did get a light scratch on his face. Feeling the warm blood running down his cheek, Leo smiled excitedly. I can still feel it. If I can't defeat a bug like this, they'll laugh at me in the world beyond. With that thought, he gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands and, with all his strength, delivered a devastating strike to the monster's body. The result was that the sword shattered into pieces. As usual, Leo requested the next sword, but in response to his words, Chelsea's face was filled with panic. She explained that it was the last sword. This unexpected information made Leo's excited expression falter for a moment. But fortunately, at that very moment, the swordswoman Celia behind him had completed preparing her skill. At this point, her entire body was radiating an intense energy, and she shouted out to Leo to let him know where to dodge. How about this? You flee of a monster? Celia yelled loudly, swinging her sword forcefully forward, releasing a terrifying pillar of fire. before the giant spider could even make another sound. It was instantly turned into roasted spider. After it was destroyed, everyone received a notification. Albi's world. Prologue chapter, the wild forest has been surpassed. Upon hearing this, Celia seemed to lose all her strength and collapsed to the ground. It's done, she sighed with relief. Then turned to Leo and remarked, "You really did hold the monster off for 5 minutes. Leo, well done." Before she could finish her sentence, the young wizard Chelsea interrupted. "Amazing. Truly incredible. You look like a hero from the stories." "Really?" Leo sighed in response, as he still didn't consider himself a true hero. In reply, Chelsea looked at him with eyes full of admiration. "Yes, I want to become a battle mage. So I really want to learn more about close combat. It's my biggest weakness. Please teach me." On the other side, Celia, seeing Chelsea actively asking Leo for training, couldn't help but smile to herself, thinking about how those untrained lambs might fare. "I truly hope everyone can experience being trained by Leo at least once," she said with a mischievous smile, making Chelsea, the wizard, completely confused about what was going on. Returning to Leo, ignoring their conversations, he bent down to pick up the ring that had fallen to the ground, wondering to himself, "Is this the item that dropped?" Then, from within the ring, a beam of light shot out, and from the light, a tiny figure with wings appeared in front of him. Looking at the face of the figure, Leo immediately recognized him as Prince Silid. "Silid, do you remember me?" "I'm Kyle," Leo quietly asked. In response, the prince smiled lightly, as if acknowledging him. Then, he turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the ring. Back to Leo's perspective, seeing his friend return with the ring, he thought to himself, "It seems that he has become the king of the elves thanks to the artifact Albi found. He has received the mana eye." As he was thinking this, the space around everyone began to collapse, accompanied by a strange sound. A countdown to return from the testing area began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The reward for passing was the vow of the Elven King, and a mysterious shadow suddenly appeared in front of Leo, whispering to him. The face of the shadow was hidden by the author, but when Leo looked at it, his expression became dazed, as though he recognized the appearance of the person. Time quickly passed, and the scene shifted to a bustling town, where an elderly man was looking at a report in his hands and muttering to himself. "It seems the exam in the Western Territory has ended," the old man said. His name was Alien Bedian, a master swordsman and the headmaster of Lumern Academy. Beside him, a young woman who seemed to be his secretary was struggling with the information. "It's finished already? But there are still so many people in other areas." "So how many people did Albi pass?" she asked with difficulty. Hearing this, Alien glanced at the report and exclaimed, "Oh, if it's Albi, the number should be quite high. 40 people passed? 40? That's a lot," the secretary sighed. However, the headmaster had already come up with a plan. "Don't worry too much. I expected about 10 people to pass," he said, laughing joyfully, leaving the secretary unsure how to respond to this. Curious, she asked, "I guess Celia or Abad would be at the top, right? So, who actually secured that spot?" In response, Alien explained, "I heard it was tough to choose, and one person was nominated as the representative for the new students." The secretary was stunned upon hearing this. She knew how strict Albi was. Professor Albi actually nominated someone? That's surprising. "So, was it Celia Zerdinger or Abad Llewellyn?" Alien replied, "It was a name I've never heard before. I didn't expect Albi to rate him so highly. I'm curious about what kind of student he is. I'm sending Leo Plav as the representative for the new students," Alien declared. "Why?" the secretary asked. "Because he has the talent to become a hero." Time quickly passed, and the scene shifted to a massive bathhouse, where our protagonist, Leo, was lying back, relaxing in the large bath. "Such pains need healing through care and time," Leo gently spoke, leaning back against the tub. In that moment, the voice of the mysterious shadow from before echoed in his mind again. "The reward for passing is the vow of the Elven King. When passing through the world of a living hero, rewards are typically not granted. Yet, somehow, only you have received one. Only you." Leo questioned this in his heart, though before he could think much more. Suddenly, Madame Reina entered the bathhouse, leaving him momentarily stunned. "Mother, what's the matter?" he asked. Reina's expression turned serious as she responded, "Leo, do you know why I was expelled from the Zerdinger family?" She paused briefly before continuing. "It was when I saved a teammate that I lost the fire demon Zerdinger. But I never regretted my decision. Leo, I want you to use your strength and talents for what is right. And congratulations on being accepted into Lumern Academy." With that, Reina smiled with a sense of satisfaction. Time continued to fly by, and the scene shifted again to a luxurious city. This was Lumeria, the home of Lumern Academy. Through the spatial portal, Leo and his group had arrived there. A voice echoed, reminding them, "You have arrived in Lumeria. Please make sure you've gathered all your belongings before leaving the portal." At that moment, Leo's gaze drifted to a collection of grand buildings across the riverbank, and he whispered, "This is the center of the world, Lumeria, and that, right there, is Lumern Academy." At the same time, in front of him, Uncle Z's voice rang out, "Leo, how was your past month?" Congratulations on passing the entrance exam, he said as he extended his hand for a greeting, which Leo quickly responded to with a handshake. Thank you, uncle. But what brings you here today? Instead of answering directly, Ziz posed a question. Our family has been embroiled in endless debates for the past month. Do you know why? Hearing this, Leo immediately understood the issue and replied, have they reached a decision on the inheritance of the phoenix's breath? Exactly. Although my sister is no longer a member of the family, you are still her son, and the elders are very impressed that you passed the notoriously difficult exam in the western region. Ziz explained. He then retrieved a golden key from his pocket and handed it to Leo, adding, this is a subspace key. Open it. Leo held the key before him and twisted it in the air as if unlocking a door. Before his eyes, a mysterious magic book appeared, radiating an unusually noble aura. Seeing this, Ziz instructed, drop a bit of your blood onto the book. Following his uncle's words, Leo bit his fingertip and let a few drops of blood fall onto the book. Instantly, it emitted a brilliant light, and strange, incomprehensible symbols appeared on its pages. Now, only you can read this book. Mastering the secret techniques of the Zerdinger family is no easy feat, but I have a feeling you will learn quickly. Congratulations on becoming a member of the Zerdinger family, Z said as he gave Leo a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The scene then shifted to a roadside cafe where Leo and Celia had arranged to meet. While Leo wandered around searching for her, he suddenly bumped into a girl about his age, causing the stack of books she carried to scatter across the ground. I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention, the girl stammered in panic as she hurried to pick up her books before rushing off. In her haste, she left behind a student ID card, which Leo noticed. Chloe Muller, a freshman at Lumern Academy, he murmured as he examined the card. Putting the matter aside, Leo made his way into a shop where the swordswoman Celia had been waiting for some time. Seeing him arrive late, she couldn't help but complain. Leo, you're late. We still need to buy uniforms, textbooks, and a lot more. I'm sorry. I had to meet with Uncle Z's. Leo apologized. Upon hearing this, Celia's face lit up with excitement. So, they've made a decision? What's the outcome? She eagerly asked. Facing Celia's questioning gaze, Leo didn't leave her in suspense for long. He immediately demonstrated his newfound ability. Suddenly, a pair of blazing wings radiating brilliant flames emerged from his back. Is this how you use it? Leo asked calmly. Celia, the swordswoman, was so shocked by the display that she dropped everything she had been holding. Impossible. It took me 3 weeks just to feel the flow of that secret technique. Leo, who are you really? She wondered, her mind reeling in disbelief. But it wasn't her fault. Leo was a legendary hero. His vast experience allowed him to grasp advanced techniques effortlessly, without the need for lengthy practice. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to a bustling dock. Unlike the old-fashioned sailing ships of the past, this dock featured a massive, modern engine-powered ship. A crowd of new students gathered, ready for the journey ahead. The towering ship left everyone in awe as they gazed around in amazement. Wow, it's huge! Exclamations of wonder spread through the group until a professor's voice commanded attention. Welcome, new students. I am Professor Ina Landu, in charge of the freshman night class. We are departing for Lumern. Everyone, board the ship now, he announced, pointing toward the vessel behind him. With that, the students hurriedly made their way aboard. On board, a lavish dessert banquet awaited them, prepared for the students' enjoyment. As everyone indulged in the sweets, a voice suddenly called out toward Leo and Celia. Hey, you two, the couple over there. Got a moment? A young man approached. My name's Car Thomas from the Kingdom of Moira. From medicine to weapons, I sell it all. Come to me if you need anything while at school, he said, handing them each a business card. Car, an alchemist, was known for his wide variety of goods. Across from him, Celia was still annoyed at being called part of a couple, so Leo responded in her place. Pleased to meet you. I'm Leo Pla from the Kingdom of Dalad, he said politely. Hearing this, Car's eyes widened with surprise. Dalad, so you passed the Western Region's exam? That's impressive, he remarked with genuine admiration. Setting aside his conversation with Car, Leo swept his eyes around, sensing that something was off. His instincts prickled uneasily. Is it just me? Or does this situation feel strange? Everything's too peaceful. It feels wrong, he murmured. In response, Celia let out a sigh and countered. A warm welcome for freshmen who passed the exam. Isn't that perfectly normal? Car, still munching on a slice of cake, nodded in agreement. Exactly. Why would they treat us harshly before we even start? This is how it should be, he declared confidently. But whether it was pure coincidence or Car's unfortunate knack for tempting fate, no sooner had the words left his mouth than the entire ship began to shake violently. The sudden tremor was a harbinger of imminent disaster. From the depths of the sea, a massive tentacle burst forth, slamming into the vessel and causing deep cracks to split the deck. The sound of splintering wood was soon drowned out by panicked screams. Professor Ein, help! Elsewhere on the deck, Professor Ina Landu observed the chaos with an air of calm indifference. He swirled his wine glass leisurely, completely unfazed by the students' plight. Help! You're all students of Lumern Academy, hero candidates. When danger strikes, It's up to you to overcome it yourselves, he said coldly. Taking a sip of his wine, he cast a casual glance forward. Rising from the sea was a colossal octopus. Its monstrous maw filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth gleaming menacingly under the sunlight. The sudden turn of events enraged Celia, who stomped on the cake in her hand out of frustration. Leo, wielding his sword to sever one of the kraken's tentacles, quickly called out to her. Celia, stay calm. Her eyes flashed with irritation. How about worrying about yourself instead, she retorted as her sword, glowing with a radiant aura, slashed at the monstrous creature. But before she could land a decisive blow, the kraken opened its gaping maw and spewed a powerful jet of water straight at her. The blast drenched Celia from head to toe, leaving her soaked and sputtering. Leo sighed and shook his head. It's basic kraken behavior. It reacts to heat by spraying water. You should know this, he muttered, further fanning her anger. Meanwhile, on the far side of the deck, a random student was ensnared by one of the kraken's tentacles, which coiled around his leg, preparing to drag him into the sea. Damn you! You overgrown octopus! Leo growled, sprinting to the rescue. In a synchronized strike, he and Celia cut the tentacle clean in half, freeing the terrified student. From beneath a table, Carr peeked out at the dazzling teamwork between Leo and Celia. His mouth fell open in disbelief. That's Celia, top of the western region, but who is this Leo guy? Before he could finish processing the thought, a frozen tentacle suddenly flew past him, nearly knocking him flat. Hey, watch it, he yelped, glaring at the source. Leo's eyes followed Carr's gaze, landing on the girl he had bumped into earlier. She was now wielding powerful ice magic, launching deadly projectiles at the kraken. The force behind her attacks was anything but ordinary. Carr, still grumbling, called out again. If you can't defend yourself, why not stay out of the fight? The girl snapped, her tone as cold as her magic. He could only sigh in resignation. Great. The strong never care if we get caught in their battles. As if to prove his point, another severed tentacle came flying straight at him. Carr barely dodged it, looking like a magnet for stray attacks. The culprits this time were a pair of siblings, Abad and Chelsea, who stepped onto the scene with confident smirks. The contest isn't over yet. Celia Zerdinger. Abad taunted. Feelings mutual. Celia shot back, her voice laced with annoyance as she braced herself for the next clash. As the students fought valiantly against the kraken, Professor Ein remained unfazed, leisurely sipping his wine, while pouring another glass. He muttered to himself. There are so many monsters in the lake leading to Lumern Academy. A kraken is just perfect for a welcome party. His gaze narrowed slightly as he observed the standout individuals in the group. As expected, the prominent captains, Chen Xia from the east, Celia Zerdinger and Abad Llewellyn from the west, Chloe Mueller from the north, Walden Tyden from the south, and Duran from central. This year's freshmen are impressive, but the one who caught my attention the most is the unidentified student. His sword skills have no unnecessary moves, and his movements suggest he can almost predict the kraken's actions. I'll meet him in the night class. Ein mused, a smile of anticipation playing on his lips. With the collective strength of these exceptional individuals, it didn't take long for the kraken to succumb to their combined assault and admit defeat. Soon after, the ship carrying them to Lumern Academy docked. As they disembarked, the students were immediately hit by the roughness of the ride, many of them gagging and looking pale, as if they'd exhausted every bit of their travel sickness medicine. Ugh, I swear I've used up all my meds. Carr muttered under his breath. Professor Ein casually jumped from the bow of the ship to the ground below, addressing the group. You'll have to cross this lake many times, so you might as well get used to it quickly. Now, let's head to the orientation hall. The scene shifted to Lumern Academy's Elikra training grounds. The new students were gathered there, surrounded by onlookers who seemed to be assessing them, looking for the most promising among them. See? I told you. No one's ordinary. I'm hoping for some interesting people this year. Murmurs started to ripple through the crowd. Ignoring the chatter, Professor Ein stepped forward and called out. Let's begin the orientation ceremony now. Form lines by region, with the highest scorers at the front of each row. The headmaster will give a few words first. Hearing the request, the group of students quickly lined up as instructed. Once they were settled, the old man, Headmaster Kallian, stepped forward to give his speech. You've come here with hopes of becoming heroes, and I have only a few words for you. If you dream of becoming heroes, always put yourselves first and push beyond your limits. Those who cannot do this do not belong here. Without missing a beat, Kallian raised his hand and smashed the podium before him, causing it to shatter into pieces. His violent act left the students below completely silent, none daring to speak, not even a clap. Noticing the lack of response, Kallian became somewhat awkward and muttered, "Did I say too much?" At this, the students snapped back to attention, erupting in loud cheers. The headmaster's face brightened, but hearing the relatively small volume of the applause, he casually remarked, "I didn't hear anything." The professors standing behind him fell into a stunned silence. The longer they taught at Lumern, the more the great image of the headmaster seemed to crumble. Yet his humor never failed to make an impression. Ignoring the oddity of the situation, the announcer then spoke up. "Next, we'll have a speech from the representative of the freshmen. The representative is Leo Plav. Please come up to the stage." Leo, surprised to find himself chosen as the representative, immediately looked over at Professor Albi. Their eyes met, and the handsome professor smiled and gave a subtle nod of approval. With no other option, Leo reluctantly stepped forward to give his speech. Fortunately, the school had already prepared a speech for him, and he read aloud. To the professors and fellow students, we, the freshmen, will enter Lumern as proud members of this academy. He finished with a brief, "Thank you," closing the book in his hands. He stepped back to leave, but the announcer didn't let him off the hook just yet. "Thank you, Leo. Now, please tell us your goals as the representative of the freshmen." Leo, hearing this, quickly guessed the school's intentions. They wanted him to provoke those who almost got the position instead of him, right? Leo, with a fearless attitude, stood tall and confidently addressed everyone, his voice filled with challenge. "Hello, I'm Leo Plav, the representative of the freshmen. If any of you want this position, come and take it, no matter who you are." His words rang out, defying anyone who doubted him. Behind him, the teachers were stunned, having just 3 seconds ago thought of him as a well-behaved and obedient student. They had expected the entrance ceremony to be peaceful, but Leo's defiant declaration changed the atmosphere entirely. The scene shifted to the late afternoon, where the freshmen were guided to their dorms at Lumern Academy. The guide spoke to them. "You've all worked hard today. Starting tomorrow, the exploration classes will begin. During this week, no matter what major you want to pursue, you can attend any class of your choice. By the end of this time, you will select 3 subjects to specialize in. Now, get a good night's sleep so you're not late for your first class." Back to Leo's room. Just before entering, Carr waved him off. "Leo, our rooms are next to each other. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Sleep well." Leo nodded and replied, "See you tomorrow?" Once inside his room, Leo tossed his suitcase on the bed and collapsed onto it, not even bothering to change clothes. However, Leo wasn't being careless. He had something important to check. As he closed his eyes, his consciousness shifted into a vast space that resembled an enormous library, filled with countless books stacked around him. "What I hope to find here at Lumern is something important. I hope to find it here. My hero's journal," Leo thought, the goal driving him in his quest for knowledge and power. As the morning passed quickly, the scene shifted to the dining hall. Leo was enjoying his meal alone when his friend Carr appeared, carrying a tray of food 3 times larger than a normal person's, and sat beside him, offering, "Leo, let's eat together." Leo, not minding the company, agreed, "Sure." However, just as his words ended, trouble arrived in the form of another tray placed right in front of him, accompanied by a loud voice. "Freshman representative, did you really mean what you said in your speech yesterday?" The owner of the voice was one of the notable individuals that Professor Ein had noticed, Duran Moira from the Central Region. His meal was fairly normal, except for a tiny flag stuck on his hamburger, likely meant for the younger students to play with. Meanwhile, Leo, sitting opposite Duran, calmly continued eating, seemingly unaware of the irritation coming from Duran. "I guess my words yesterday were pretty provocative, huh?" Leo remarked, unbothered. "Well, if a stranger comes in and causes a scene like that, I guess it's not surprising." The more calm Leo appeared, the angrier Duran got. His eyes widened as he leaned in and retorted, "You don't know who I am, do you? I'm the captain of the Central Region." On the opposite side, Leo and Carr continued to ignore him, enjoying their meal as if Duran were just a clown desperately trying to get attention but being completely ignored. Unable to contain his rage any longer, Duran unleashed a burst of lightning, kicking his food into the air. His tray, along with Leo's, was sent flying into the air. But this was not enough to disturb Leo. With exceptional dexterity, Leo's arms moved like a machine, catching all the food back into his plate without dropping a single piece. In fact, he even helped Carr catch his food as well. Not only that, Leo casually stuffed some extra ingredients into his hamburger, crafting a deluxe double cheeseburger. Throwing away such a fine meal is unforgivable, Leo said with a slight smile. Seeing his attempt to provoke Leo fail, Duran completely lost his composure. "I'll drag you down from your golden throne right now. I can't stand seeing someone weaker than me act so arrogantly," Duran snarled, his teeth grinding. But before the confrontation could escalate further, a large hand suddenly rested on both of their shoulders, stopping them in their tracks. The person who arrived was Professor Ein, and with a cold tone, he addressed the disorderly behavior in the cafeteria. "We'll see. One of you is the captain of the Central Region, and the other is the freshman representative, quarreling on the first day at Lumern. I suppose you're both ready for what's to come." His voice carried a dangerous edge, causing both Duran and Leo to unconsciously swallow nervously, realizing the gravity of the situation. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to the night's exploration class. The students who were interested in the course had been waiting for a while, but Professor Ein didn't begin the lesson or explain anything, which made one of the students, a brown-haired boy, raise his hand with a puzzled expression. "Excuse me, Professor, but class is about to start." At the same time, Celia, the swordswoman, also wondered why Leo hadn't arrived yet. As if answering their unspoken questions, Leo and Duran finally stumbled into the classroom. looking as though they had just completed 10 laps around the school grounds. Seeing Leo drenched in sweat, Celia rushed over to ask, "Leo, what happened? Did you get into a fight?" Leo didn't explain much and merely glanced at Duran with a slightly amused look. After everyone had gathered, Professor Ein finally began the class. "Now that everyone's here, let's start the lesson. Welcome, freshmen. I am Ina Landu, in charge of the first-year nights course." In the front row, Duran, still seething over the incident with Leo, couldn't help but glance at him with a glare full of hostility. This made Carr sense that something interesting was about to unfold in the class. "Oh, looks like they've already started a psychological battle," he thought to himself. Professor Ein continued without paying attention to the rivalry in the classroom, explaining the lesson. The 3 powers of mana, magical energy, soul energy, and the aura field. Of these, the aura field is the most difficult to control. Does anyone know why? Celia, the swordswoman, quickly answered the professor's question. "It's because the aura field reduces the flexibility of mana during the transformation process." Professor Ein gave her an approving glance and nodded. "Exactly. While magical energy and soul energy use mana in its pure form, the aura field absorbs mana and processes it to suit the body. Now, can anyone explain how we use the accumulated aura field in our bodies?" As he spoke, a radiant glow began to emanate from his body. Celia, despite her skill, was unsure of the exact answer. "Isn't it just a matter of applying some force?" she thought to herself. When no one else answered, Leo spoke up, taking the initiative for everyone. "We use the aura field by burning mana." Professor Ein's face showed a hint of surprise and he nodded approvingly. "Correct. Now, do you know the most important thing when burning mana? It's endurance." Leo explained once more. As Ein listened, his expression began to change, gradually becoming more impressed. "Impressive, Leo Plav. Have you studied aura fields before?" Leo shook his head, causing the professor's evaluation of him to rise even higher. "You've never formally studied aura fields, yet you're able to grasp its essence. Interesting," Professor Ein thought, a small smile spreading across his face. "Well then, let's set the theory aside for a moment. How about we try moving our bodies a bit?" With that, he focused his energy into his feet, to the astonishment of all the students. The professor's steps seemed to tread on the air as though walking on solid ground. This is the step of the aura field. The basic principle is to concentrate the power of the aura field into your feet, and its potential applications are limitless. Time passed quickly, and the students began to pair up and practice the mysterious technique. However, it wasn't easy, and most of them struggled to master it. The only exception was Celia, the so-called genius. She had managed to grasp the technique fairly well and, turning to Leo, she smirked. "Hee hee, I'll show you how to do it if you call me sister." Leo, with his calm demeanor, glanced at Celia and dismissed her offer. No need. The principle behind the aura field isn't much different from basic stuff. He wasn't interested in learning from her, as he already had a good grasp of the concept. Meanwhile, Professor Ein had noticed Duran's intense gaze focused on something, which led him to smile as if coming up with an interesting idea. He clapped his hands to grab everyone's attention. "As you all know, there was a bit of a disturbance earlier today." Jessie, the sorceress, seemed confused, asking, "What are you talking about, Professor?" Professor Ein then gestured for both Leo and Duran to step forward. He turned to Duran and asked, "Duran Moira, what's made you so upset?" Duran replied with a feigned calmness, "I'm not upset," but he couldn't even meet the professor's eyes. Ein, without needing further explanation, already guessed the cause. He decided to give both of them a chance to settle things with a race. "Let's take this outside then. Duran Moira, the team captain of the Central Region, and Leo Plav, the representative of the new students, will have a one-on-one race to decide who will represent the class. You can use your aura field without any restrictions in this race." Duran looked momentarily startled, but then Carved, the businessman, eagerly stepped forward with a banner and started making bets. "Come on, place your bets. The genius of the Moira family, heir to the heroes, Duran Moira, master of the Thunder Aura Field, versus the underdog from the suburbs, Leo Plav, who's already conquered the leaders of every region and become the representative of the new students." Elsewhere, the students were gossiping among themselves. "I mean, he's the new student representative, so he has to show something, right? From what I saw when he talked to Celia Zerdinger, it doesn't even look like he can use the aura step. Did you hear what he did yesterday? I can't stand him. Becoming the team captain of the Central Region isn't something just anyone can do. Unlike this new student representative who hasn't proven anything." Various murmurs of doubt started circulating. Professor Ein ignored the whispers and saw that both Leo and Duran were now in position. He called out, "All right, the first one to cross the finish line wins. Whoever wins, you must accept the result gracefully. That's what true knightly spirit is about. Get into position." Celia, despite her logic telling her that Leo wouldn't win, had an inexplicable feeling that things might turn out differently. Honestly, Leo won't win, but he has this way of always exceeding people's expectations. The professor shouted, "Go," and with that, both Leo and Duran pushed off with all their might, racing toward the finish line. Next, It wasn't really surprising when Duran, with the advantage of using his air step, surged ahead. "I'll go ahead, newbie," he mocked, and then shot forward like a rocket. Seeing his speed, everyone couldn't help but be impressed. "Wow, just as expected from Duran. So cool," they said. As for the first-year representative, while speaking, everyone turned to look at Leo and subtly shook their heads. "I can't believe it. He's really bad," they murmured. Just as predicted, that guy being the representative is a scam. This is unacceptable. Nearby, the mage Chelsea noticed that no one was showing any respect to Leo, so she shouted loudly to cheer him on. "Leo, go for it." Back on the track, with his lightning speed, Duran had already covered half the distance. Seeing the current result, Carr couldn't help but worry for his new friend. Duran had already gone halfway, while Leo, of course, realized this. So, as he reached the bend, Leo suddenly slammed the brakes. Then, for reasons unknown, he concentrated his strength into the soles of his feet and launched himself off the ground, leaving the track behind. Chelsea looked on with confusion, unable to understand what Leo was doing. From their perspective, the main character kept jumping and shooting upwards, eventually stopping to observe Duran running ahead. He focused all his strength into his legs and executed a burst of speed. His jump was so powerful that it cracked the ground beneath him, and his body sped forward faster than a rocket. As he zoomed past Duran, he couldn't resist taunting him. "I'm ahead now, you slowpoke." Just like that, while Duran was still trying to figure out what had happened, Leo had already reached the finish line. And it wasn't just Duran who was stunned. Everyone who had mocked Leo earlier was left dumbfounded, shocked and astonished. "Did you see that? This is no joke." Duran, who was supposed to be the fastest of the first-year students, actually lost to him, one of them said. "But I'm sure he's never learned the air step technique." The group looked at each other in confusion after witnessing Leo suddenly accelerate so fast. Meanwhile, Celia, the swordswoman, was different from the rest. She had realized the technique Leo had used earlier wasn't the air step, it was the phoenix step. In the corner, the goldfish brain duo, Chelsea and Carr, didn't think too much about it. They were just happy Leo had won and cheered for him. As for Professor Ayan, with his experience, he was the one who could see the most. Duran had used his signature thunderous air step to increase his speed, and I had expected that. But the speed was truly astonishing. Meanwhile, although Leo Plov was slower, he had better control. He focused all his fire aura into his legs and created a formidable step, an excellent application. In the current generation, perhaps a true hero has finally emerged, he said with a hopeful smile. Meanwhile, after winning, Leo went over to greet his opponent. "Great match, Duran. If it were a long race, the result might have been different," he said, extending his hand. However, Duran, still too proud to show a pleasant face to Leo, shoved his hand away and sneered. "Get lost, you loser." Despite Duran's unpleasant words, the mage Chelsea ran over to Leo with admiration in her eyes. "Leo, you're amazing. I want to train with you too." Looking at her gaze, Carr seemed confused, not understanding why she was so infatuated with Leo instead of him. "But why is she so taken with him and not me? She should pay attention to me too," he muttered. "Of course she does," Celia replied, giving Carr a look as if she was staring at an idiot. "Anyway, now that class is over, let's go to the cafe. My treat," Carr happily suggested. It seemed he had earned some money from the earlier bet. However, Leo gently declined the offer. "Sorry, but you guys go ahead." "Where are you going?" Carr asked curiously. "I'm going to the summoning class," the protagonist straightforwardly shared. Hearing this, the orange-haired guy was baffled. Why would a student from the swordsmanship department go to the summoning class? In response, Celia could only sigh in frustration. "I don't understand what he's thinking either." Back to Leo, as he was on his way to the summoning class. He was deep in thought, pondering something that still confused him. There was one thing he couldn't understand. Why had the Fairy King given him a vow as a reward? A reward from the world of heroes, connected to the power of its master. The reward he received had something to do with summoning. But Professor Albi was a pure mage with no connection to summoning. Normally, he would have received a skill related to magic. Furthermore, to form a pact with a spirit being, he would have to go to the land of spirits. Right now, it would be useless, Leo murmured to himself before being awakened by a girl's voice. "So, you came to attend the summoning class too?" Upon hearing this, Leo turned around and saw the person who had called him, Chen Xia, the captain of the Eastern team. She was 17 years old. Seeing that Leo had noticed her, Chen Xia nodded and greeted him. "Nice to meet you, Leo." Leo responded with a smile. "Nice to meet you too, Chen Xia. You can just call me Xia," she said, waving her hand before turning to ask why Leo was there. "I'm sure you're a student from the swordsmanship department, so I didn't expect you to be interested in summoning." "Well, I'm interested in spiritual studies," Leo explained to brush it off. "In that case, we'll be seeing each other often," Chen Xia said lightly. Then, Leo asked her if she could tell him which spirit she had formed a pact with. Without hesitation, Chen Xia summoned her water elemental spirit for Leo to see. It seemed to be a water-type spirit. "Now, show me your spirit," Chen Xia requested. I haven't formed a pact yet. Leo explained, which caused Chinxia to be a bit surprised. Really? Well, if you ever need help, feel free to ask me. I can offer some advice on summoning spirits. Alright, I'll remember that. But how old are you? Leo asked curiously. I'm 17 years old. Leo, you're 15, right? I heard you talking with Celia, she replied. Hearing her age, Leo couldn't help but exclaim in his mind. 17 years old? She really looks much younger. She even looks younger than Chelsea. As he thought about this, he realized that Chinxia was staring at him with a look of suspicion. Then, as if she had a woman's intuition, she asked, Did you just think something rude? Didn't you? No, not at all. Leo said quickly, glancing in another direction. Forget about this. Chinxia said with a gentle smile before suggesting. But anyway, Leo, I was really impressed with your match against Duran. One day, please accept my challenge. In response, our protagonist was never afraid of any challenge. So he smiled and accepted. Of course. The scene then shifts to the summoning class. Upon arriving, Leo was a bit surprised by the small number of people in the class. Is this all? He wondered. Behind him, Chinxia answered, looking a bit awkward. Well, summoning isn't a popular choice, and this is just an exploratory class. But it is surprising to see the class being held here. Leo muttered, looking at the lesson taking place in this grassy field. I didn't expect a class to be held here. Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared overhead, causing the group to panic. A black dragon. Where did it come from? One student screamed in fear as the dragon stared at them. Seeing their frightened reactions, a female voice spoke to explain. It's here because it likes you. Kid, nice to meet all of you first-year students. My name is Yura Marin, and I will be your summoning teacher for the upcoming year. Around her, the male students couldn't help but stare at her beautiful face and her vibrant, youthful figure. Their hearts raced with excitement. I want to become her spirit beast, the group dreamed aloud. Not even considering the others. Even Leo had to admit her beauty. If Dueno were here, he'd definitely go crazy. Leo thought to himself, recalling his friend's womanizing ways in his past life. Facing Professor Yura, after waiting for the group to settle down a bit, she finally spoke to begin the lesson. Alright, rookies, the fact that you are here proves you have some talent in summoning. Am I right? Yes, the entire group shouted in unison, making her quite satisfied. Good, that's a loud and clear answer. We'll head straight to the practice area, she continued. Then, Yura turned to remind her assistant. Carlo, a white-haired young man with glasses, led a griffin to assist the students. He was the teaching assistant for the first-year summoning class. Seeing that the transportation was ready, Yura continued. You'll ride in pairs, 2 people per griffin. Now, get on. Hearing her instructions, one student hesitantly spoke up. Professor, this is the first time we're riding a griffin, he said, his eyes full of hope for guidance. Unfortunately, his plea was entirely dismissed. What he received was nothing more than an angry glare from Yura. So, are you saying you don't want to listen to my lesson? If you think you can't do it, then turn back now. With that, she quickly mounted her black dragon and took off, leaving the bewildered students behind. It was Carlo who eventually stepped in to encourage everyone. Come on, follow the professor. Surprisingly, riding the griffins turned out to be easier than the students had feared. Chinxia eagerly partnered with Leo. Leo, can I hold the reins of the griffin? She asked. Although Leo seemed a bit surprised, he agreed. Sure, hold them as long as you want. With a bit of practice, the group soon caught up with their professor. Only when they felt the fresh sea breeze blowing against their faces did they realize the joy of having a mount. Wow, I can't believe we're riding griffins. This really is Lumern level quality. Hey, switch with me. I want to fly too. Just a little longer. Come on. The sounds of friendly squabbles filled the air. Meanwhile, Chinxia couldn't hide her excitement. I was a little nervous, but it's much gentler than I thought. Hearing that, Leo reminded her. Be careful. Griffins are tricky to control for beginners. Upon hearing these words, Chinxia couldn't suppress her curiosity. Huh? But it looks so gentle. That's because, Leo began to explain. However, before he could finish, Professor Yura, who was standing in front, suddenly took out a whistle and blew into it with puffed cheeks. The sound was so loud and piercing that it made everyone uncomfortable. The moment the sound reached their ears, the demeanor of the griffins changed completely, becoming aggressive and far more difficult to control. This isn't good. They're not listening anymore. What's happening? Professor, help us, the group cried out in panic. But Yura made no move to offer assistance. Instead, she stayed firmly seated and crossed her arms, calmly instructing. Do you really think you deserve to be students of Lumern Academy if you can't control a simple griffin? Handle it yourselves. Meanwhile, Chinxia, riding with Leo, was just as flustered when her mount suddenly turned unruly. Seeing her distress, Leo gently placed his arm around her waist, clasped her hand, and guided her carefully. Griffins have a very strong sense of pride. Trying to force them into submission will only make them more rebellious, he explained softly. Hello, what are you doing? Chinxia stammered. her face turning as red as a ripe tomato. Unfazed by her embarrassment, Leo calmly took hold of the reins and gradually gained control of the griffin. "Up we go," he commanded. As if responding to his calm authority, the griffin immediately steadied itself and surged forward with renewed speed. Even Yura, watching the scene unfold, couldn't help but praise him. "Well done. Not bad at all." She then turned to her assistant. "Carlo, isn't the first-year representative from the engineering department?" "Yes, that's right," Carlo confirmed after a quick glance at his notes. "Does he have his own griffin at home? Otherwise, how is he riding so well?" Yura asked. Intrigued, Carlo shook his head. "No, he's not from any noble family with griffins." At this, Yura's eyes sparkled as if she had just won a lottery. "Natural talent," she mused aloud. "It looks like we've discovered a hidden gem." Stroking her chin thoughtfully, she smiled with a look of growing admiration. The scene shifts to Summoning Island, the designated practice area for the summoning department. At this moment, most of the students were sprawled across the sandy shores, feeling dizzy and nauseous after the arduous task of riding griffins to reach this destination. While they were still reeling from motion sickness, Leo took the opportunity to wander around, curious to see what interesting things this place had to offer. As he explored, a peculiar fruit caught his eye, prompting him to pluck it from a nearby branch. However, what truly drew his attention was not the fruit itself but the feather stuck to it. A star feather. Leo whispered to himself, examining it closely, noticing the odd expression on his face. Chen Xia asked, "What's the matter, Leo?" "Ah, it's nothing," Leo replied, shaking his head with a faint smile. Elsewhere, Professor Yura, far from letting her students fully recover, raised her voice and barked out an order. "Stop dawdling and pay attention. Starting now, you will take a practical test." The students' eyes widened in shock as collective groans filled the air. "What? A practical test on the first day? But we just got here. Isn't this supposed to be an orientation class?" a student with a middle-part hairstyle protested. In response, Yura sighed and began explaining in a matter-of-fact tone. "Compared to other disciplines, the path of a summoner is far more challenging. Is there anyone here who doesn't understand that? For a summoner, controlling mana alone is not enough. To forge a contract with a spirit, you must harmonize with its essence. To command summoned creatures, you need mastery over taming techniques. That's why the number of summoner heroes is much smaller than that of other departments." However, she paused, her gaze sweeping over the students. "Those few who reach the pinnacle of summoning accomplish far greater feats than most others. Isn't that why you all chose this path, to become that kind of hero?" A silver-haired girl stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Yes," she affirmed firmly. "So, what's the test?" This girl was Eliza Herjin, a member of the prestigious Herjin family of summoning heroes from the north. Yura glanced at her briefly before continuing her explanation. "This island is called Summoning Island for a reason. It's teeming with summoned creatures. Summoning is your weapon, and your test is to demonstrate your taming ability. It's simple," she declared with a grin. "Tame one summoned creature from the forest and bring it back. Once you've tamed and formed a contract with it, that creature will belong to you." The students' eyes lit up with excitement. The possibility of gaining a personal creature on their very first day sent their enthusiasm skyrocketing. "Wow! Lumern Academy is the best," someone shouted. Without wasting another moment, the entire group dashed eagerly into the forest, each one determined to find the perfect pet to claim as their own. As Leo prepared to move deeper into the forest in search of a suitable summoned creature, a voice suddenly called out behind him. Well, the first-year representative," Eliza said, a faint smirk playing on her lips, words spreading fast about how you defeated Duran. "Should I expect anything impressive from you in summoning class?" "I'm just doing my best," Leo replied coolly. Without turning his head, he kept walking forward, his pace steady and determined. Behind him, Eliza's eyes narrowed, her brows knitting together as a hint of irritation flashed across her face. Meanwhile, Professor Yura, watching from a distance, couldn't help but smile inwardly. "Looks like these students will be key players among the first years," she mused. Time passed swiftly. Several students had already begun forming bonds with their summoned creatures, proudly taming and befriending the mystical beings they encountered. However, Leo continued to wander deeper into the forest, his eyes scanning for the right target. "Look, someone tamed a creature," a student exclaimed, pointing toward the forest. "Isn't that the first-year representative?" another remarked. "But isn't he going too far into the woods?" Someone shrugged dismissively. "Whatever. If he fails to tame something and gets a 0, he'll just crawl back to the night department where he belongs. Summoning isn't as easy as he thinks." Ignoring the murmurs and whispers, Leo pressed on, venturing farther into the depths of the forest. When he finally felt certain no one else was nearby, he stopped. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the star feather he had picked up earlier. Holding it firmly in his hand, he summoned his fire aura, channeling its intense heat to ignite the feather. "Haha, just as I thought." A grin spread across his face. However, before he could finish his thought, a powerful explosion erupted behind him. The ground shook violently, and the blast sent a wave of scorching heat across the area. Meanwhile, at a distant campsite, Lady Reina sat near a fire, her expression tense and full of worry. "Will Leo be all right?" she whispered, her fingers tightening around a cup of tea. A companion beside her set down a plate of food and chuckled softly. "It's only the first few days of school. Reina, you're already fretting this much?" "I know, but nothing bad will happen. Right?" Reina replied uncertainly, accepting the cup of water with a sigh. Little did she know, her concern wasn't misplaced. Far away, her son was indeed in serious trouble of the highest order. The ground beneath Leo trembled as he stared ahead, his eyes wide in astonishment. The searing heat, that power? One of the 3 legendary summons, he muttered, his breath caught in his throat. The Phoenix. In front of Leo, a deep, commanding voice echoed through the blazing heat. "Just the child of Zerdinger. Are you?" "I smell the fiery aura of Reina." Leo's eyes lit up with curiosity. "You know my mother?" The voice softened, a hint of fondness seeping through. "Your mother, you say?" Then I wasn't mistaken. "Yes, if she had a child. They'd be around your age by now." "Do I know her?" "Of course. I do. I owe Reina a great debt." The speaker revealed itself, an awe-inspiring phoenix wreathed in flames, its radiant feathers glowing with an almost otherworldly fire. Its name was Farina, one of the 3 legendary spirit beasts. Her gaze, filled with a mix of warmth and power, settled on Leo. "My name is Farina, son of Reina." Leo responded respectfully. "Greetings, Phoenix Farina. I am Leo Plav. What connection do you have with my mother? You mentioned that you owe her." At his question, Farina's eyes flickered with the light of distant memories. Her tone turned reverent as she began recounting her tale. "Reina saved the life of my summoner, Elen Lunda. It was many years ago when Ellen was exploring a treacherous dungeon in Siren. She had lost all her comrades and faced death itself. Your mother appeared and rescued her. But in doing so, she lost her blazing aura, her most powerful asset. Had it not been for that sacrifice, Reina would have ascended to the rank of a true hero." Leo's heart clenched as he listened, sadness creeping into his expression. Yet, he spoke with quiet conviction. "My mother told me she never regretted that decision. Not even for a moment." "Ha?" Farina blinked, then let out a soft laugh. "Of course. That's Reina, always the selfless knight." Leo's curiosity piqued again. "What brings you here to this island?" "Farina." The phoenix's expression grew guarded, and her blazing eyes narrowed slightly. "That? I cannot tell you, child." However, she quickly shifted her attention back to him. "But you, are you not a knight? Why are you here in a summoning class?" "I'm learning to be a summoner," Leo stated simply. Farina stared at him in stunned silence before bursting into laughter, her flames dancing with her mirth. "How amusing. Truly fascinating. Leo Plav. This must be fate. At last, I can repay my debt to your mother." Extending one of her fiery wings, she gestured toward a radiant, golden object. "Take this, Leo. Vitreverence." She presented him a gleaming egg that shone with a majestic, golden light. "This is my child. One day, when you become a great summoner, I hope you will form a contract with it. The summoner originally destined for this companion has lost their right. Now, it belongs to you." The egg radiated immense heat and power, a gift of extraordinary significance, glowing with the promise of untold potential. Back to the main character. After hearing Farina's words, he immediately asked, "Can I do this right now?" Farina, seeing his determination, froze for a moment before quickly warning him. "It's still too early. You could lose your life." "Stop. Oh no, it's too late." Farina sighed, her gaze softening as she spoke. "Your readiness to challenge the impossible without hesitation reminds me of Reina. I wish you luck." Back to Leo. At this point, his consciousness was transported into a dark space. In front of him, a flickering flame emitted a warm glow. Leo, upon seeing it, reached out and gently touched the flame. The moment his hand made contact, the flame erupted violently, engulfing his body in a fiery vortex. "The heat is unbearable. This is the Phoenix flame," Leo thought. "To create such a powerful fire, we must endure this pain daily. A creature that lives by eternally regenerating its burnt flesh. I understand your pain and share it with you," Leo whispered to himself, as if sensing his thoughts. The flame gradually weakened and became much gentler. At the same time, outside the dark space, the egg cracked, revealing fissures along its surface. It then detached from Leo's hand and slowly floated into the air, drawing all the surrounding flames into itself. "Have you succeeded?" Farina's voice asked. "I did it." Leo smiled, responding with pride. Farina beamed with joy. "You're a genius, Leo Plav. You will become the greatest summoner in the world," she praised. "Congratulations on successfully forming the contract. This child's name is Fiora. I entrust my child to you." Farina's smile was warm, but it carried a bittersweet sentiment of maternal love. The newborn had barely felt the warmth of its mother for 3 seconds before being handed off to someone else. Looking at the phoenix in front of him, Leo felt a bit puzzled. Is this really the phoenix? Why does it look more like a chick, he wondered to himself. The tiny chick, still in its naive state, chirped twice, looking at Leo with curious eyes, further confirming his suspicion. This is definitely a chick. The scene shifts to Professor Yura, who was observing the students as they returned with their summoned creatures. After taking a quick glance at the students, she turned to ask her assistant, Carlo, what time is it? Carlo immediately understood the situation and replied, 5 more minutes, only 4 left. No sooner had he finished speaking, heavy footsteps echoed from the distance, grabbing the attention of the professor. Approaching them was a gigantic black bear, the summoned creature of one of the students. Professor, you're not finished yet, are you? The student, looking a bit ragged, spoke as if she had gone through quite a struggle to tame the bear. But the results were impressive. Even Professor Yura complimented her. You tamed a water bear as an apprentice knight? Impressive. At the same time, Walden, the big guy, was clinging to the legs of a massive bird, which landed heavily on the ground. Is that a shadow raven? Professor Yura asked, her voice filled with admiration. That's a spirit beast that even famous summoning families struggle to tame. However, Walden quickly clarified, I haven't contracted with it yet. That's good enough. More than enough. Yura waved her hand dismissively. Next, Eliza rode back to the gathering spot on top of a massive white serpent, drawing awestruck looks from the others around her. I've already contracted with it. My family didn't have one of these, she said nonchalantly. Recognizing the creature, Yura couldn't help but praise. A Gorgon serpent? Fantastic. Nearby, Carlo reminded her. Professor, time's up. At that moment, the final student was arriving. Everyone turned their attention to the back, and they saw Leo slowly emerging from the forest. What stood out was the tiny chick on his head. Seeing it, the students couldn't help but laugh. Haha, what's this? He tamed a chicken. What a fool. He probably gave up once he realized he couldn't summon anything decent. Contrary to the students' mocking thoughts, as soon as Professor Yura sensed the aura emanating from the chick, her eyes widened in shock. Damn it, that little monster? That's a phoenix. Time quickly passed, and the scene shifts to Professor Yura's office. Leo was called in for a private meeting with her. Outside the door, Leo adjusted his clothes to make sure he looked neat and then lightly knocked on the door. Inside the office, Yura, aware that Leo had arrived, called out, Come in. Leo, curious, asked, I heard you were looking for me. Sit down, she gestured, then continued. You know, I have to say, this is the first time I've seen a phoenix. Honestly, I didn't even know there were phoenixes on the summoning island. And to think a first-year student has contracted with one. This has never happened in the history of the academy. She paused for a moment, her gaze fixing intently on Leo, her voice growing serious as she said, I know exactly who you are. Leo. On the other side, Leo, hearing this, couldn't help but swallow nervously, worried that his true identity might be exposed. Although he wasn't guilty of anything, the fact that a hero could be reborn after 50 years would undoubtedly attract attention. However, Leo was overthinking it, as Professor Yura immediately embraced him tightly and praised him endlessly. You are a genius summoner. A never-before-seen talent, she said, with admiration in her voice. I want to commend you for your achievements. But your contract with the Phoenix must remain a secret. If it's revealed now, things could get unnecessarily chaotic. When the trial classes end, make sure to choose summoning as your major. You have the talent to become a hero of summoners remembered throughout the ages. She said this while gently patting Leo's shoulder, full of trust in him. Time flew by, and the next day, Chloe, the ice mage, was yawning as she walked down the hallway. Leo and Car bumped into her, and Leo teased her. Your mouth's about to fall off. Chloe, haha, you look tired. Chloe, turning around, explained that she had stayed up late reading magic books. At the same time, Leo remembered her student ID and said, You're Chloe Mueller, right? He then handed her the ID card. Chloe looked at it and remembered meeting Leo before. Oh, it's you. Thanks, freshman representative. With that, the three of them walked together into class. Today was the day for the magic trial classes. And Car, curious, asked, Looks like you'll be joining the magic class. Huh, Leo? Since we're still in the trial phase, I want to join as many classes as possible. Leo answered calmly, which made Car feel a bit envious of Leo's thirst for knowledge. That's amazing. As for me, I'm only interested in magic, so I'm only attending the magic class. As they talked, Car suddenly lowered his voice and whispered in Leo's ear. The Ice Queen is aiming for the peak of the magic department. Her name is Chloe Mueller. Leo glanced over at Chloe, noticing that she was looking at him. This made Car feel a chill running down his spine, and he quickly turned to leave, cheerfully saying, It's too cold here, isn't it? I think I should move to the back. However, before Car could leave his spot, a sharp ice column suddenly erupted from the ground, blocking his path. The person responsible for this, of course, was Chloe. Car, come up to the front seat, she said. It seems like you're interested in the class, so I'll help you out. With that, she grabbed Car by the collar and dragged him along, like pulling a small dog, causing him to silently cry out in frustration. Watching this scene, Leo couldn't help but feel a bit amused. At the same time, the mage duo, Abad and Chelsea, greeted Leo from behind. A few minutes later, the teacher for the class entered through the door. and the appearance of this teacher had all the female students excited. "Oh my god. He's so handsome," they whispered among themselves. Ignoring the chatter, the handsome teacher raised his voice and said, "I will be teaching you magic this year. My name is Lenore." Pausing for a moment, Len lightly tapped a stack of test papers beside him and reminded everyone, "Before we begin today's trial class, you'll first be taking a theoretical magic test." With a snap of his fingers, the test papers automatically flew to each student. The fact that they had to take a test before learning anything made the students' minds go blank in confusion. "What? A test on the first day of the trial class?" someone exclaimed. Len confirmed with a smile. "That's right. If you don't meet certain standards, you won't be allowed to attend my class. If you're a student of Lummer, this level of test should be fine for you. Once you finish the test, submit it to my assistant, Anna," he added. On the other side, Anna, the assistant professor for first-year magic students, waved and greeted the students. "Please submit your test papers to me once you're done." As for Leo, looking at the test questions, he felt a heavy weight on his shoulders, his body trembling slightly. This was the first time in the series that he had such an expression. Is this really the current magic trend? Why are the formulas so complicated? Leo silently grumbled to himself. Time quickly passed, and everyone remained focused on their test. After finishing, they realized that the test wasn't as difficult as they had originally thought. "This is easier than I thought," one student said. "But what's the answer to the last question?" "I got everything except that one," another chimed in. And the group began to excitedly discuss their answers. Meanwhile, Leo was struggling. His head felt like it was about to explode from overthinking. "I only solved one question," he thought, his hands shaking as he handed in his pitiful test to the assistant. "I should have studied more magic before coming here." Leo sighed inwardly and quickly left the classroom. With his ancient magic knowledge, attending these classes would only embarrass him. Back with the handsome Professor Len. As soon as he collected the tests, he began grading them on the spot. In the past century, magic had evolved a great deal. What once required perfect understanding now only needed knowledge of the activation conditions to use it. However, this development had led to a decline in the general level of magicians. As he spoke, a beam of light shot out from his palm and soared into the air. The classroom transformed into a vast and mysterious cosmic space. The students gaped in awe at the spectacle before them. Seeing their astonishment, Len didn't leave them in suspense and explained, "This is the essence of magic that I created. I made it from the end to the beginning. I want you all to become magicians capable of researching and creating your own magic. Which is why I gave you this test. 49 questions, each worth 1 point based on simple memorization. And the last question, worth 51 points, analyzes the true essence of magic. I hope that all of you here will be capable of solving it." Back to Chloe. When she looked at her test, she felt a bit embarrassed. It was no surprise that the last question was the only one she couldn't solve. Did Leo give up? She wondered. I really wanted to take the magic class with him. What a shame. At that moment, the teaching assistant, Anna, seemed to have realized something and hurried over to Len, whispering in his ear, "Professor, one of the students has solved question 50. Hearing Anna's words, Len's face showed a look of astonishment. Then, he burst out laughing in pure delight. "Ha ha ha, who is it? One of you has achieved a perfect score for the first time in history. Please, stand up. Who is it?" Len's face flushed with excitement as he eagerly awaited the reveal. Anna quickly interjected, "Professor, that student didn't get a perfect score." Len, still grinning, seemed to brush off the correction, feeling as though it was inevitable. "Oh? It seems a few other questions were missed because too much time was spent on the final question. A bit unfortunate, but still good. Come up here," Anna, lowering her voice, clarified. "No, they only answered the last question." Len's smile instantly disappeared, and he asked in disbelief, "What's their name?" "Student Leo Plov," Anna responded. Then Leo Plov, "Please stand up," Len called out, scanning the room. However, after handing in his test, Leo had already left. Chelsea, a fellow student, spoke up to explain. Leo left after finishing the test. Meanwhile, Leo was happily enjoying ice cream with Celia, recounting the details of his magic test, which made Celia laugh heartily. "Haha, so you just left after answering one question? First, you're the summoner with the little chicken, and then you only answered one question in the magic class? Leo, don't you think you're doing something wrong? If you're a knight student, you should focus on your swordsmanship." Leo, a bit irritated, retorted, "Well, do you want to practice endurance with me?" Celia hesitated, her voice faltering. Well, that's a bit." Just then, their conversation was interrupted by Professor Len. "So, you're a knight student? Are you Leo Plov, the one who disrespected my class? Why did you leave after solving just one question? Was it too easy for you, so you thought it wasn't worth answering?" His eyes were filled with anger as he glared at Leo. Not wanting to anger the professor, Leo immediately explained, "Professor, I think there's a misunderstanding. I didn't think I passed the test. Every question except the last one was too difficult, and I couldn't solve them. I self-studied magic through old magic books, so I'm not confident with modern questions." Len, Instead of getting angry, listened intently. His face gradually changed, and instead of scolding Leo, he suddenly picked him up like a small cat, his excitement evident. "Follow me for a moment," he said, his voice filled with anticipation. After saying that, Professor Len happily dragged Leo along like a toy, leaving Leo no chance to resist. Meanwhile, Celia, the swordswoman, stood there in confusion, unable to understand what was happening. "Is that the theory magic professor from the Lumern Academy? Such a strange man," she whispered with a puzzled look. At that moment, Professor Len's assistant, Anna, rushed over with a tired expression. "Have you seen Professor Len, Celia? Is something strange going on?" she asked, out of breath from presumably chasing after him. Celia turned and explained everything she had witnessed. "He just left here." But suddenly, he grabbed Leo and dragged him away. Upon hearing this, Anna's face turned pale with panic, and she immediately started running after them. "Oh my God. What is that madman planning to do this time?" she yelled to herself. Back with Professor Len, he had already dragged Leo into a meeting room and started writing a series of questions on the board. "Solve these, Student Leo," he instructed. Although Leo was somewhat confused about why this was happening, he quickly began solving the problems. For Professor Len, this was another test to assess Leo's abilities. If Leo hadn't solved the last question purely by luck, it meant he must have a unique magical system in his mind. "Now, show me," Len thought, eager to understand the true nature of Leo's abilities. But before Len could finish his thoughts, Leo paused, turned to him, and said, "I've solved everything already." Seeing this, sweat started pouring from Len's face. "You solved all of these in your head?" he asked in disbelief. "Well, something like that." Leo shrugged nonchalantly, which left Professor Len drooling in excitement. Finally, Len whispered under his breath, overcome with excitement and anticipation. Meanwhile, Professor Albee was walking down the hallway when he suddenly noticed Professor Len running toward him, wearing a face as if he had just won the lottery. Seeing Len's expression, Albee felt an unsettling sensation in his heart and quickly turned to leave. However, Len wouldn't let him escape so easily. A second later, Len lunged forward, grabbed Albee's ankle with both hands, and said with a grateful look, "Thank you, Professor Albee. Thank you so much." In response, Albee immediately used his magic to levitate Len off the ground and warned him, "This isn't the first time I've seen you act impulsively, but today you've gone too far." Despite the warning, Len kept his excited and eager expression, sharing, "He's a genius in magic, Leo Plov. The student you recommended as the freshman representative. He's truly a genius." Hearing this, Albee felt a moment of confusion. Magic? Isn't he a knight? But then, Len's words seemed to spark something in him. "No, Leo must become a mage at all costs. I won't let his talent be wasted wielding those swords. Sending him to the Knight Order is an insult to the field of magic." Len yelled angrily. At that moment, Professor Len's assistant, Anna, also arrived on the scene. Seeing the situation, Albee released his magic, letting Len fall back to the ground. Fortunately, Anna had anticipated this and sped up to catch him just in time. "Thank you, Anna," Len said with a beaming smile. "We really need to get back to the classroom." Anna, her face flushed with anger and veins visible from her frustration, muttered to herself, "One day, I'll kill that madman." At this moment, Leo also leisurely walked from behind, and as his footsteps echoed, Professor Albee turned his head and nodded, making Leo feel a bit flustered. Wizards never changed with time. All of them were madmen. Just like that, time quickly flew by. A week passed, and the trial classes had come to an end. Currently, our protagonist lay on the rooftop of a certain building, intently reading a book titled Kyle, the True Beginning Hero, a Fraud. Closing the book with a heavy sigh, Leo felt disheartened, as he hadn't found any useful information within its pages. Meanwhile, in Principal Kalian's office, the man was engrossed in his work when suddenly, 3 homeroom teachers of the magic, night, and summoning classes burst in, each holding a registration form. "Please look at this," they exclaimed. According to the document, Leo had registered for all 3 disciplines, an unprecedented occurrence at the academy. Each teacher was determined to pull Leo into their respective classes, insisting he focus on just one specialization. Inside the office, the 3 instructors bickered relentlessly, prompting Kalian to chuckle. "Ah, this reminds me of that fictional hero, the great 5th hero, also known as the beginning hero, Kyle, the only one in history to master every class." The scene shifts to the running field, where Celia and Chelsea were jogging with great effort. Nearby, Carr lounged lazily, commenting with a smirk, "Seriously, why are they training on a weekend?" Leo responded, "Chelsea asked me to train her." "Then why are they just running? Where are their weapons?" Carr asked. Before Leo could reply, both Abad and Chelsea, thoroughly exhausted, answered for him, "It's our endurance. We need stamina. It's crucial for combat mages. That's why we're running. Now move aside, Carr." Chelsea waved her hand dismissively as if shooing a fly, clearing the way to sit beside Leo, next to the protagonist. Chelsea's demeanor changed completely as soon as she sat down. A sharp contrast to her earlier irritation when dealing with Car. It's wonderful to jog on weekends. I miss this feeling so much. I want to run with you too. Leo, she said. Really? Leo asked, intrigued. Hearing this, Celia, the swordswoman, spat out the water she had just been drinking, spraying it everywhere. Chelsea shot her a disgusted, horrified look. What's wrong with you? Turning back toward Leo. He already understood the reason for Celia's reaction. So he simply said, well, I was planning to run with you too, but you have to do it seriously. I already told you I'm not running with you, Celia shouted. Beside them, Car observed the exchange with growing curiosity. What's going on between you two? You seem so close. At first, I thought you two were dating. Car pointed at Leo and clarified. He's my cousin, the son of my aunt, my father's sister. Hearing this, both girls in front of them widened their eyes in surprise. He's from the Zerdinger family? Not exactly. It's complicated. But never mind. Celia waved her hand dismissively, unwilling to delve further. And perhaps she didn't fully understand it herself. Leo, after giving the girls some time to rest, stood up and suggested, all right, let's get serious now. Chelsea brightened with excitement. Sure, let's go. Car, the alchemist, decided it was time to leave them to their training. I'll go explore Rumeria, he said. Celia turned to him with a desperate look. Take me with you. Before she could finish her plea, Leo dragged her off like a chicken being hauled away, and her pitiful state left Car speechless. Why is it that there's never a decent noble in my life, he wondered to himself. Time flew by, and the day of class assignments finally arrived. In class 1 to 5, as soon as the protagonist stepped in, Car eagerly waved him over. Leo, over here. Seeing this, our protagonist walked over and asked, so you already know you're in class 5? There's nothing I don't know. Car thumped his chest with a confident grin. Leo's eyes then shifted to Chelsea, the mage, who was dozing off at her desk, and he let out a surprised, huh? Chelsea's here too. Looking at her exhausted expression, Car gave Leo a suspicious glance. What did you do to her over the weekend? Just basic training. Leo shrugged. Chelsea, half asleep but still hearing his words, silently vowed never to take part in that kind of training again. At that moment, for reasons unknown, a mocking voice came from behind Leo. The jeers of upperclassmen filled the room. Oh wow, so this is class 5, the class of misery. Huh? I wonder how many of you poor souls will survive the first semester. My condolences. Hehe. Though they claimed to offer condolences, there wasn't a trace of sympathy on their faces. However, they shouldn't have said that, because right then, the homeroom teacher of class 5 arrived. Misery, you say? I think you two look far more pitiful. Wouldn't you agree? The owner of the voice was a man with a face that could easily be mistaken for a homeless person's, his ragged appearance adding an air of unpredictability to the scene. This man was Harid Edmund, the homeroom teacher for class 1 at Lumern Academy, infamously nicknamed the Wailing Wall. At that moment, he muttered one word, chair, and immediately, two students across from him instinctively braced themselves into a chair-like posture. Without hesitation, Harid sat down on their bodies, using them as makeshift seats while sneering at the students in front of him. Greetings, you worthless scum. Welcome to the class for failures, the bottom of the barrel among all first years. You've probably heard of me, the Wailing Wall. Does anyone here know why I was chosen to be your homeroom teacher? Hearing his question, Car, ever the bold one, raised his trembling hand. Is it to help us improve our grades? Harid turned his disdainful gaze toward him. Car Thomas, a textbook response from the lowest ranked student. Does no one in this pathetic class understand the purpose of a Lumern Academy student? Chelsea, still groggy but emboldened, raised her hand to offer her view. To conquer the world of heroes through practical missions. At this, Harid's eyes lit up with a brief flicker of approval, and he nodded. Correct. But all I see here are weaklings who will die the moment they step into the real world. Expelling useless parasites who drag their comrades to an early grave, that's my goal. That's why I took charge of class 5, and why they call me the Wailing Wall. As he spoke, his sharp gaze swept across the class, briefly resting on Leo's composed expression, prompting a private thought. That one, he might survive. With a smirk, he barked. Time for a reality check. Get into your combat gear and meet me on the training grounds. This is combat class. The scene shifted to the training field. Moments later, the students, now clad in their athletic uniforms, gathered nervously. Harid reclined lazily to the side, as if on a leisurely vacation. Let's begin, he declared. Welcome to the class where we purge the rotten ideals you've nurtured since stepping foot into Lumern Academy. Tell me, what do you believe will save you in real life? Where life and death hang by a thread? A pink-haired girl timidly spoke up. Isn't it, having teammates to protect you? Her name is Nella Carvin, a knight major with a special note about her healing attribute aura. After hearing her confident response, Harid shook his head and remarked, no, it's your own abilities that matter. Only when you hone your skills to shine through every danger can you start helping your teammates. But do you have confidence in your ability to protect them? At this point, an eager hand was raised. I'm confident, Professor, came the reply. Harid, surprised, raised an eyebrow. Oh, well, let's see what you're capable of as a magical knight. Create a fireball. Eliana, upon hearing the request, confidently formed a fireball in her palm. However, Harid, seeing this, appeared disappointed and mocked. Is that all? With that fireball, I doubt you could even kill an ant. Not backing down, Eliana retorted. If I add more mana, how about this? With that, she channeled more magic into the fireball, making it expand. In a flash, the fireball split into two massive ones, radiating immense heat that caused the nearby students to quickly step back. The class gasped in awe, impressed not only by the fact that there were now two fireballs but that their size had also doubled. Even Harid, usually indifferent, couldn't help but praise. Wow, that's impressive. Why don't you try hitting this little creature with your magnificent fireballs? With a flick of his wrist, he summoned a tiny humanoid elemental spirit, which shot toward Eliana at lightning speed. To everyone's surprise, the tiny creature playfully tapped her on the nose before bursting into laughter. Confused by its mocking behavior, Eliana's anger flared. She swung the two massive fireballs toward the spirit, but they couldn't even touch the hem of its tiny cloak. The little elemental spirit, after dodging Eliana's fireball, flew back to Harid and covered its mouth while laughing at Eliana. Harid, noticing Eliana's failed attempt, couldn't resist taunting. What does it matter if you create two fireballs if you can't even land a hit? Have you finally realized what you're lacking? It's the ability to use your skills effectively. You need to train and push your limits. Have you forgotten? This lesson will not end until you catch the wind spirit. So show me everything you've got. Descendants of Lumern. Leo, though irritated by Harid's harsh words, couldn't help but agree. Despite the bluntness, everything Harid said was on point. Let me give it a try, he said calmly as he stepped onto the training field. Harid, seeing Leo's composure, spoke with anticipation. All right, Leo Plav, let's see if you're just a liar like that fictional hero Kyle, or the first person to truly possess every attribute. Time quickly passed, and the other students in the class tried and failed to catch the tiny wind spirit. No matter how hard they tried, it toyed with them effortlessly. Leo, observing the situation, began to gather his energy, enveloping his body with his aura. He focused the energy into his feet and then executed a powerful burst of speed. His jump launched him forward, moving as quickly as a flash of lightning. Meanwhile, Chelsea and Carr, exhausted from the constant chase, were struggling to keep up with the tiny spirit. Damn, why is he so fast? How can we catch him? Carr groaned, frustrated. At that moment, Leo used his air step technique and propelled himself into the sky, seizing the opportunity when the wind spirit was distracted by the other students. Leo dove down from above like an arrow. However, even though the spirit was slightly caught off guard, its reflexes were extraordinary. In the split second before Leo could strike, the spirit swiftly dodged, zipping to the side. This, however, was exactly what Leo had anticipated. Leo smiled lightly, focusing his aura into a whip-like strand and controlling it to strike towards the wind spirit. Just as he was about to succeed, a sudden interruption came. Duran, who had been lurking in the shadows, dashed out at lightning speed and snatched the success from Leo at the last moment. Meanwhile, from behind, a voice clapped, catching everyone's attention. Looks like we in Class 1 should teach you a few things, said the man with white hair and a sly smile. Sejin, the Class 1-to-1 teacher of the Lumern Academy. Notably, he was ranked second in the graduation vote, with Harid holding the first place. The two teachers didn't seem to get along well, despite their long tenures at the academy. Harid, still casually sipping milk, responded lazily. Oh, really? Then I suppose you're going to teach in my place? Sejin shot a disdainful look at Harid, not responding directly, and instead declared, I propose a competition between Class 1 and Class 5. The event will be the Lumern History Ball game. Batera. Upon hearing this challenge, Carr eagerly spoke up, sensing the brewing rivalry. This is a showdown between the pillars of Lumern Academy. Both of them have worked here for over 20 years. I've heard that Professors Ayan, Yura, and Len are all disciples of these two. Nila, shocked by the revelation, turned to Carr and asked, Wow, really? How do you know all of this? Carr, with a proud smile, blushed slightly. I'm always quick on the news. Haha. Chelsea, overhearing the conversation, looked visibly disgusted. Meanwhile, Sejin, grinning, laughed heartily. Harid, I don't know what your plans are with this class of failures, but I'll find out soon enough. I'm proposing the competition between our classes now. As for the event, it'll be Batera. Harid, intrigued by the suggestion, rose enthusiastically, agreeing. Just as I expected. You're a genius. Sejin, learning through real experience is the best. The tension in the air was palpable as the challenge between the two seasoned teachers seemed to set the stage for an intense clash. Hearing this, Sejin felt a flicker of doubt creeping into his mind. Class 1 will probably win, he said. his voice trailing off uncertainly. Meanwhile, Harid wore an expression as though he didn't care at all about the outcome. It doesn't matter, he replied nonchalantly. Just keep teaching your class. Sejin, gritting his teeth in frustration, could only fume silently. Even the students behind him felt a bit sorry for him. How did I keep losing the bets in the graduation vote? Sejin wondered to himself. The students couldn't help but think that Professor Sejin seemed rather pitiable for some reason. After a brief moment of silence, Harid officially declared to his class. Class 5, I'll give you a chance to hone your skills. You'll face Class 1 in a game of Batera. And if you lose, all of you will be expelled. He spoke with complete seriousness, leaving no room for joking around. Hearing Harid's words, the students were initially stunned, unsure if they had misheard. Sir, are you serious? They asked, disbelief creeping into their voices. This is the first match, and their class has 3 team captains. In response, Harid appeared indifferent to the power gap between the two classes. That's all the more reason to try harder. Push past your limits. What's there to worry about? The first-year representatives are already in your class. Pick 6 representatives for the Batera match. As he said this, his gaze fell on Leo, who quickly realized the true purpose behind the teacher's actions. This was clearly a test. But Harid wasn't looking at him because he disliked him. Some students had lost their spirit just after 1 week at Lumern Academy. And it wasn't hard to see why. Harid likely wanted Leo to help lift the spirits of Class 5, which was on the brink of giving up. He had to find a way to motivate his class in the Batera match. Soon enough, both classes began selecting their representatives. And as expected, Class 1 picked their strongest captains. Seeing the strength of the opposition, Chelsea, the mage, began to fret about how to explain being expelled to her family. Observing her worried expression, Leo couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? You seem scared." Chelsea explained to Leo, "I guess you've never heard of Batera. Probably because you lived in the outskirts. But Batera is a combat sport, and it's a long-standing tradition at Lumern Academy." Leo, still confused, looked at her and asked, "Isn't it just a ball game?" Car, overhearing, interjected, "It's not just a simple ball game. The thing is, it's an extremely dangerous sport." Meanwhile, Celia, standing nearby, couldn't help but laugh at the clueless expressions of Leo and the others. "Chelsea, why do you look so scared? Haha, have you already accepted defeat?" Her voice was full of mocking, causing Chelsea to roll her eyes in frustration. "Who's scared of you?" Chelsea shot back, furious. "Do you think I'll lose to someone from the Zerdinger family?" To boost the morale of his team, Leo confidently wrapped his arm around them and reassured, "Don't worry, we won't lose. Class, we've got this." Celia clicked her tongue in annoyance and warned Leo, "TCH Leo, you too. I'll show you the results of my special training. This time, I won't lose to you." Her challenge was clear, but Leo wasn't fazed. Meanwhile, after a bit of verbal sparring between the two classes, Professor Sejin stepped in, saying, "All contestants from each class, please proceed to the arena." Upon hearing this, Leo turned to his classmates and asked, "Who will join me?" The question caused some hesitation, as fear crept into the group. However, not everyone was afraid to face the challenge. Chelsea and Eliana, both mages, quickly volunteered. "I'm definitely going to teach them a lesson," Chelsea said, cracking her knuckles. Eliana, too, wanted to impress Harid. "If we lose and get expelled, I'll channel all my anger into winning. I'll show Professor Harid my capabilities." On the other side, Nila, the mage with the healing aura, and a hesitant classmate stood up. Finally, Kar, the alchemist who had been hiding at the back, was pulled out by Leo. "Kar, you know the last spots for you, right?" Kar was shocked, but Leo had already made the decision. After gathering his team, Leo reported to Sejin, "Class 5 is ready, Professor." Sejin nodded. "Good, let the match begin." With that, he tossed the ball into the air, signaling the start of the game. Everyone's attention shifted to the ball. Without warning, both Leo and Duran rushed forward with lightning speed to seize the ball. However, Duran, with his storm-like aura, was just a step faster and successfully snatched the ball right in front of Leo. "All right, our class takes the lead," Duran said coldly, as Leo landed on the ground. He quickly turned to his blonde-haired teammate, Tide, and asked, "Tide, can you quickly explain the rules to me?" Tide, understanding the urgency, quickly summarized, "Oh, Batera is simpler than you think. You just need to channel energy into the ball and shoot it into the goal. But you can't use your hands or feet. The team that scores 11 points first wins." By the way, the blonde-haired teammate, T. de Marqua, is from the summoning department. On the other side, Duran began to focus his energy aura, preparing for an attack. Seeing this, someone from their group shouted, "It's coming. Get ready." As the words finished, Duran channeled his strength into his fist and struck the ball in front of him, causing the ball to deform and soar forward at breakneck speed. Seeing this, Leo, who was standing in front of the ball, was startled by its speed and quickly jumped to the side to avoid it. The rubber ball then slammed into the ground and flew straight toward the goal, leaving Car, who was watching in bewilderment, confused about what had just happened. The students from Class 1, on the other hand, cheered enthusiastically. Duran Moira, well done. On the opposite side, the students of Class 5 began to worry. Their faces pale. Even Tide, usually confident, looked uncertain. It seems like Professor Harrid is planning to expel all of us, he muttered. Leo, hearing this, did not lose his confidence. Instead, he turned to ask, how do we regain control of the ball? Tide began explaining that there were 3 ways to do so. First, when the ball goes out of bounds during the opponent's turn. Second, when we catch the ball. And lastly, Tide was about to explain the third method when suddenly, Nella's anxious voice rang out. Dodge! At the sound of her shout, both Leo and Tide turned around and saw that the rubber ball had struck Eliana, the mage, squarely in the chest, causing her to cry out in pain. The person who had just made the strike was none other than Celia, the swordswoman. Hey, what are you whispering about over there? Can't you focus on the match? Celia giggled as she spoke. Upon hearing this, Leo and Tide hurried over to check on their teammate, and Tide continued explaining. The third way to regain control is that you can't directly attack or block the opponent. What just happened is the third method, when a player is knocked out after being hit by the ball. The only way to attack them is by using the ball itself. Hearing this, Leo understood the rules of the game fully. He then gently picked up the ball, nodded in appreciation for the explanation, and said, thanks for the explanation. Now, it's our turn. Regarding Professor Sejin, even though the situation seemed to be progressing favorably for his class, there was an inexplicable unease within him. In Batera, teams with fire attribute users had an overwhelming advantage due to their high destructive power. And among the families, the Zerdinger family's flames were the strongest. Thinking of this, he turned to the lazy professor beside him and spoke. You accepted even though Celia Zerdinger is in my class? I don't know what you're plotting, but it will be very hard for your class to win. On the side, Harrid didn't respond immediately. Instead, he yawned, which further irritated Sejin. He urged, speak properly. Only then did Harrid finally open his mouth. Hey, Sejin, do you remember my first student? The one from the Zerdinger family. At these words, Sejin immediately recalled the image of that student and nodded. Of course, how could I forget? The Queen of Batera. Seeing that Sejin remembered her, Harrid smiled slightly and reminded him. Her daughter is in Class 5. Meanwhile, the students of Class 5, seeing their class's already weaker strength and now losing Eliana due to her injury, had given up all hope. We're finished. How did we even get into Lumern Academy? To end like this? At that moment, Celia, the swordswoman, gave Leo a worried look. It seemed that she had finally made her decision. From her gaze, Leo's body suddenly erupted with a strong flame. It's coming. Be careful, someone shouted. Just after the shout, the protagonist gathered all his strength and threw the ball straight toward the opponent's goal. However, Class 1's strength was no joke. Before the ball could reach their goal, Chloe, the ice mage, used her magic to create an ice wall, blocking the ball. Leo, as long as I'm here, scoring will be impossible, she said confidently. But just at that moment, Leo suddenly appeared right next to her and muttered, I can still score. Next, without giving the opponent a chance to react, Leo gathered all his strength into the soles of his feet and jumped high, heading straight for the spot where the ball was trapped inside the ice wall. He then delivered a powerful punch to the ball, immediately breaking the ice and sending the ball flying into the goal. On the other side, Professor Sejin watched Leo's quick reaction with admiration, thinking to himself, his fighting sense is truly impressive. Seeing this, Professor Harrid smiled with satisfaction, while the students in Nella's class seemed to have found a glimmer of hope and shouted in unison, Leo Plav, let's go, Class 5. Seeing the opponent's team regain their momentum, Professor Sejin couldn't help but smile and muttered, ah, I see now. This is when the Real match begins. Time quickly passed as both sides exchanged blows and kept a close score. Neither team was willing to fall behind. At this moment, Duran threw another thunderbolt, sending the ball flying toward the opponent's goal. Carr, desperate, grabbed the ball with both hands, but the electric field surrounding the ball caused his body to shake with pain. Despite this, he successfully blocked the ball. Haha, my mana's almost drained. The rest is up to you, Leo, he said, before being helped off the field by Eliana and Chelsea. Outside the field, the group looked at the current score with worried expressions. It was tied at 10 points each. The next point would decide everything. But the opponents have 3 of the best students, and we only have Leo. This is really bad, they thought. On the other side, Chloe, the ice mage, realized that the next ball toss would be the deciding one. Determined, she prepared to unleash all her power. I may have failed the theoretical magic exam, but I won't lose this time, she said, waving her hand and using some mysterious magic, summoning 4 clones of herself around her. Not to be outdone, Celia and Duran wrapped their bodies in energy fields, preparing to confront Leo. Come at me, Leo, Celia shouted. In response, Leo focused all his energy into his feet and suddenly vanished from their sight, leaving them stunned. He's too fast, they whispered. With an unexpected burst of speed, Leo passed Celia, causing her to realize his true intent. He's not trying to attack, she thought. He's focusing on scoring. Behind her, Chloe immediately recognized the situation. Is this an illusion spell? How shallow. Then she focused her magic into her eyes, trying to locate Leo's real form. However, every image of Leo she saw seemed identical to the real one. Or at least, she couldn't tell which one was the real body. This left Chloe in a daze. And just like that, Leo and his team passed her and successfully scored. The magic of the stars? How could a human use magic from the fairy tribe? Chloe thought in astonishment. Meanwhile, the referee, witnessing the outcome, declared, the winner is Class 5. Upon hearing this, 2 students from Class 5 hugged each other in joyous tears. Thank goodness. We won't be expelled. I was afraid I'd have to go home immediately. Hearing these words, Professor Sejin turned curiously to Harid and asked, expelled? What are they talking about? In response, the laid-back Harid burst into laughter. Haha, I guess you could say that's their motivation. On the other side, Celia, Chloe, and Duran were holding their faces in disappointment. Seeing this, Sejin sighed and went over to comfort them. Are you upset because you lost? At the end of the match, no matter the result, you should greet your opponents. All of you did very well, securing victory for your class, cheering on your friends, and giving it your all in the arena. You should be determined and proud of yourselves. The students from Class 1, hearing these words from their teacher, looked at him with admiration. Unfortunately, this beautiful atmosphere didn't last even 3 seconds before it was interrupted by Harid's mocking laughter from behind. Haha, hey, losers, come here and wrap it up. Hearing this, Sejin became furious internally, but he had no choice but to step up and say a few words. Both classes did very well. Class 1 showcased their talents and abilities, while Class 5 never gave up until the last moment and overcame every challenge. They recognized their limits and successfully overcame a tough situation. I hope you all continue to work and compete harmoniously with one another. Now, let's shake hands. Upon hearing this, the students from both sides extended their hands to shake. You made the match last longer than I thought. I thought you'd lose sooner, Celia said with a smile. I was about to tell you the same thing. You're as stubborn as an octopus, Prince. Chelsea replied. Nearby, Carr smiled and said to Duran, but this time, we won. On the other side, Duran didn't respond, only staring at him, making Carr feel a bit awkward. Meanwhile, Chloe, the mage, was still so upset she was on the verge of crying over the loss. Then, Leo extended his hand to comfort her. You were amazing, Chloe. With a little more experience, you'll definitely become extraordinary. Hearing this, Chloe looked straight at him and asked, are you mocking me? She silently swore in her heart. One day, I'll beat you, and tightly grasped Leo's hand. And so, time passed quickly. A month later, Leo and his group were happily sitting and drinking tea together. Meanwhile, Carr, who looked as hollow as a machine, asked the group, by the way, which club are you guys planning to join? Looking at Carr's ravenous eating habits, Chelsea, with her aristocratic demeanor, was disgusted and reminded him, eat properly for once. Back to Leo. He shared that he wanted to start a club. And of course, this bold idea left Carr in astonishment. Upon hearing this, the mage Chelsea excitedly said, if Leo wants to start a club, I want to join. What kind of club is it? Carr asked. Leo, in response, openly shared his thoughts. It's a heroes research club. I want to learn more about the forgotten heroes and the original hero, Kyle. Upon hearing this, Carr and Chelsea exchanged glances with wide eyes, then shook their heads. Kyle? But he's not a forgotten hero. He's just fictional. It seems like no one's going to join your club, Carr said with a chuckle. Chelsea, however, immediately realized that if Carr's words were true, she could be alone with Leo in the club. I want to join, Chelsea shouted enthusiastically. Suddenly, the conversation was interrupted by loud shouts from the crowd. Wow, they're back. Upon hearing this, Carr seemed to recall something and quickly stood up from his chair. Oh, that's right. Today's the day when the 5th-year students return after cleaning the hero's dungeon. He said this while hurrying out to join the commotion. The fragments of the hero's chronicles were scattered across the world, and occasionally, they would act erratically, creating dungeons. These places were known as hero dungeons, and the senior students at Lumern Academy were responsible for cleaning these dungeons and gathering the fragments of the hero's chronicles. This task would require them to be away for at least 2 weeks, sometimes even more than a month. Leo silently thought to himself that his mother must have gone through similar experiences. Beside him, the mage Plav gazed at the seniors in awe. Wow, is this really the pinnacle of Lumern Academy? In response, Carr eagerly showed off a bit and started introducing each person to her. The muscular man to the east is Lee Jamua. The woman from the southern region next to him is Torua Yen, and the pale man wearing the hood is Ulta. though I haven't seen him around today. Carr paused as if he had expected someone else to be with the three of them. Who's the other person? Leo asked. Curious. The head of Lumern Academy. The student council president. Reese. Carr replied. At that moment, someone grabbed Leo's shoulder and pulled him away. When Carr turned around to continue the conversation, he noticed his friend's voice had suddenly disappeared. Turning back to Leo, the one who had pulled him away was none other than the swordswoman Celia. Seeing her rush, Leo couldn't help but ask, Celia, what's going on? In response, Celia explained that Leo needed to go with her to Lemuria City because the student council president wanted to meet him. Why would the student council president want to see me? Leo asked, his eyes full of curiosity. However, Celia wasn't sure either and couldn't explain. You never really care about school matters, do you? Just come with me, and you'll find out. Celia sighed. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to a room with Eastern-style architecture. At this point, Celia seemed a bit restless, glancing around and muttering, I wonder why he wanted to meet here. This scent, though. Leo shrugged and replied, it smells quite pleasant, doesn't it? Before they could continue their conversation, the student council president appeared. The moment Celia saw him, she dashed straight toward him like a small cat. Big brother. Reese gently ruffled his younger sister Celia's hair and then turned his attention to Leo, offering a warm greeting. It's a pleasure to meet you, Leo Plov. I've heard a lot about you. Are you aiming to become an all-powerful hero? This man was Reese Zerdinger, a knight from Lumern Academy and also the president of the student council. Before they began discussing anything further, Reese called for a basket of dumplings and invited everyone to help themselves. I hope this is to your liking, he said gently. Ah, yes, Leo replied, noticing his sister's slightly nervous expression. Reese asked, what's wrong? Celia explained that this was her first time trying this dish, which was why she looked so uneasy. After taking a small bite, her eyes widened in surprise, and she exclaimed, it's so delicious. Seeing her reaction, Reese smiled contentedly and said, haha, this is the restaurant I wanted to take you to. Once you join Lumern, this place will be your regular stop. Then, with a brief pause, Reese shifted the conversation toward Leo. But I never expected you to be the son of that person. Leo, realizing who Reese was referring to, asked, have you met my mother before? Yes, I met her a few times when I was younger. Your mother was pretty well known back in her school days. Reese nodded, which made Leo even more curious. My mother? Leo echoed, intrigued. To clarify, Reese began recounting some of the legendary feats of Lady Reyna. Indeed, she made quite an impression. For example, she once declared that the desserts at the dormitory's dining hall were awful and rallied all the students to storm the principal's office. Wait, that was her? The one who caused all that trouble? Celia yelled, surprised. Yes, that's the one. Reese laughed. As the group continued chatting, Leo quietly evaluated the student council president's strength. He had to admit, Reese lived up to the rumors. He was undoubtedly the strongest among the students at Lumern Academy. It seemed like it was only a matter of time before Reese became a true hero. Leo thought to himself. Next, after everyone finished eating, Reese happily stood up and said, well then, let's go have dessert. I'll pay, so you all can go ahead. Upon hearing this, Leo and Celia quickly got up and left the table. At the same time, Reese suddenly felt a slight warmth in his chest. So he reached into his pocket and pulled out a glowing piece of paper. Huh? What's this about? Reese murmured to himself. Time quickly passed, and the scene shifted to Leo's classroom. At this moment, the mage Eliana spoke up and asked, Professor, I have a question. In response, the gruff professor leaned back, put his feet on the desk, and asked with a smug expression, Eliana Layden, let me hear your pointless question. Hearing this, Eliana didn't get angry but raised her hand and spoke loudly. Why haven't we chosen a class president yet? I heard all the other classes have already chosen theirs. Ah, that's true, Tide agreed with a nod. Only after hearing Eliana bring it up did the professor remember. Class president? Oh right, I forgot about that, he said. He then turned to Leo and suggested, Leo, you do it. Before Leo could respond, the other two immediately complained. Why is that? Professor? Shouldn't we choose a class representative democratically through a vote? To answer the question, Harid tossed a stack of papers, about half a meter tall, onto the teacher's desk and instructed, Class president, take this and organize them. Upon seeing the enormous workload, Eliana instinctively shrank back, no longer daring to speak. Soon after, the loudspeaker mounted on the wall emitted a sound announcing, in just a moment, we will have a joint lesson on herd behavior. All first-year students are requested to prepare and head to the auditorium. Upon hearing this, Leo glanced at the professor and asked, Professor, should we head over right now? That's the attitude of a class president. Harid nodded in agreement. The scene then shifted to the auditorium, where, according to the announcement, students were slowly gathering. Here, Leo and Harid encountered the mage Chloe, whose current appearance intrigued both of them. "Hi Chloe. You look tired," Leo greeted. Upon hearing this, Chloe's eyes brightened a little, and she immediately asked, "Do you have any recovery potions left? Could you sell them to me?" Seeing this, Car didn't hesitate and immediately threw 2 recovery potions to her, saying, "These are all I have." Leo, standing beside her, spoke with some concern. "It's only the beginning of the year, and you're already pushing yourself like this?" On this side, after receiving the potions, the mage Chloe immediately drank them in one go and assured that she was fine. Seeing the determination on Chloe's face, Car couldn't help but admire her. "Wow, impressive. She's at the top of magical theory." Beside them, the mage Chelsea added, "But I guess Chloe has no choice but to worry. The moment Leo learns the latest magical trends, he might surpass her in the magical theory exam." "Huh? What's wrong with being second?" Car asked, confused. Chelsea then turned to him, giving him a look as if he were an idiot. "Are you really out of your mind? She's a mage of the tower. We're combat mages, so we're not too concerned about falling behind a little in theory. But research into new magical studies is the core of the mage tower. Her honor is at stake here. Are you really a mage?" In response to this, the alchemist casually replied, "First of all, of course, I live by magic. Survival magic is my pride." In another turn of events, after the student council president Reese noticed the glowing paper in his hand, he immediately went to meet with the headmaster, Kallian, to discuss the matter. Upon hearing the story, the headmaster's expression changed, becoming serious. "The heroic chronicle fragment has reacted," he said, his voice grave. "Is it true that this heroic fragment has reacted?" Reese nodded firmly, confirming the situation. "Yes, it's a fragment that was damaged to the point that it shouldn't be able to react anymore. But it truly has. Moreover, there are no relics nearby." Upon hearing this, Headmaster Kallian asked further, "Did it react again afterward?" "No," Reese replied, shaking his head. There was no further reaction. The lack of information made it difficult for the headmaster to make sense of the strange occurrence. "Well, I suppose we'll need to investigate this further. You've just returned, so you must be tired. You did well." After saying that, he called in his secretary, Elena, and instructed her to take this to the Hall of Beginnings. In the lecture hall, the first year's general class was about to begin. "Yes, understood." Elena nodded and quickly headed towards the hall, leaving the headmaster deep in thought. Sometimes, fragments like these can still react if the person recorded in the heroic chronicle comes into contact with them. "It will react," he murmured to himself. Transitioning to the lecture hall of Lumern Academy, the first-year heroic studies class was in session. The instructor for this class was Professor Arshan Nir, who was responsible for class 1 to 8. Since the classes were all sitting together, the room was noisy, with students chatting away, creating a cacophony that made the petite professor feel flustered. "Please be quiet," Arshan called out, trying to maintain control. However, the students continued talking, as if they hadn't heard her at all, pushing Arshan to her breaking point. Just then, the shadow of a unicorn appeared behind her, and her personality shifted completely. "Everyone, if you don't want to be punished, shut up. You damn idiots. Do you want to die?" she shouted loudly, her demeanor entirely different from the gentle face she had earlier. "Damn it. Why won't you listen?" she continued. And just as suddenly as the switch flipped, Arshan returned to her kind expression, saying, "Ah, finally. It's quiet. Thank you," she cheerfully remarked, causing the students to shiver in fear. "So terrifying," one of the students whispered in shock. "Oh my god. Even though we've seen it 100 times, it's still scary. Our professor is truly terrifying." The students from Class 8 trembled, their hearts racing with fear. Meanwhile, Leo, seeing Arshan's rapid change in personality as quick as the speed of light, couldn't help but be amazed. In his previous life, spiritual mages were very rare, and now it seemed that Arshan was one of them. Turning back to Arshan, once she noticed that the class had become silent, she took out a dagger and began her lecture. "We will begin the first-year general class on heroic studies," she started. "After the appearance of the heroic chronicles, the reason for the emergence of hero families is this: to open the world of a hero. You need an object deeply connected or closely related to that hero. As a result, the descendants of heroes are able to open the hero's world more easily. This is why Lumern Academy, which preserves the heroic chronicles, has a deep connection with these hero families. Although this has political undertones, it's similar to the relationship between a key and a treasure. Now, do you understand why heroic studies are important?" She paused for a moment before continuing. "Heroic studies are important because they help us find clues to conquer a hero's world or understand them better. When you reach your final year, you will choose a hero to inherit their powers and test yourself with their heroic chronicles." At that moment, Elena, the secretary, entered the lecture hall and handed the earlier glowing paper to Professor Arshan. Just as expected, Arshan cheerfully shared it with the class. "Everyone, this is a piece of the heroic chronicle brought back by the 5th-year students of Lumern Academy," Arshan announced. Hearing this, The students gasped in awe, not letting their curiosity linger too long. Arshan opened the box slightly. The students, eager and tense, held their breath, watching intently. However, before it was fully opened, Arshan suddenly closed it again. Alright, before we experience this heroic chronicle fragment, let's first discuss the goals you wish to achieve as a hero, she said. The students, seeing this, were disappointed but listened intently. Next, Celia, the swordswoman, raised her hand to speak. I want to become a knight who surpasses the generations before me in my family. Oh, that's a wonderful goal. Arshan praised her. On the other side, Chloe, the mage, spoke up as well. I want to write a book of spells containing only my original magic. I want to support the heroes. Kar, with pride, said, I want to be someone who supports the heroes, and his dream received praise from Arshan as well. It seems Kar wants to be someone who supports the heroes. Truly admirable, she commented. Then Leo, who had been silent, finally spoke his goal. My goal is to completely destroy Erebos. His words caused the entire hall to fall into complete silence. After about 2 seconds of silence, Professor Arshan awkwardly spoke. Ah, yes, that's quite an incredible goal. She quickly moved on. Alright, next. Not paying attention to the strange looks around him, Leo calmly sat back down in his seat. Meanwhile, some of the upperclassmen began to mock Leo's dream. Is he dreaming too big? The goal of a first-year representative. Really? As for Professors Harid and Sejin, after hearing Leo's declaration, Sejin glanced at his colleague and asked, What do you think? Harid shuddered and replied, That's spine-chilling. He's not the type to speak nonsense. Harid thought back to Leo's words and reflected on them. It's been millennia since Erebos was split into many fragments and sealed. Yet he has repeatedly reincarnated over the years. Just one fragment's reincarnation is enough to cause disaster. But his dream is to completely destroy Erebos? The more I think about it, the more complicated this seems. Back to Professor Arshan. After wrapping up the discussion on the students' dreams, she continued. Now, today, we will read a page from the heroic chronicle brought back from the dungeon. After guessing which hero the page belongs to, we will learn how to conquer that hero's world. Oh, by the way, in case anything unexpected happens, the professors from the other classes will also be observing here. So please, no causing trouble. At this, the heartbeat of the students in the hall started to accelerate with nervous anticipation. Finally, this would be the first time they were touching the heroic chronicle. The students whispered excitedly, but Arshan quickly got their attention. Alright, then, please, the representatives from each class, step up. Hearing this, Leo and the familiar representatives quickly made their way to the stage. Arshan then continued. This time, we have 2 heroic chronicles that were brought back. Of course, we'll only use one for today's lesson. The other is a very small fragment, but we've brought it out to show you that such pieces exist. As she spoke, she presented 2 boxes in front of Leo. Leo casually picked up the small piece in front of him. But right after that, an unexpected anomaly occurred. Everyone suddenly received an announcement. The heroic chronicle has opened. The world of Unclear. Chapter Unclear. Suddenly, a massive and incredibly complex magic circle appeared above the stage. On the other side, Professor Sejin shouted, It's getting out of control. No sooner had he spoken, when their figures suddenly vanished from the eyes of the students. By the time they reappeared, they found themselves in a completely unfamiliar world. This was an unfamiliar world with a blood-red sky, and around them were countless monster corpses of various shapes and sizes. Upon seeing the scene, a girl from the group screamed in fear. Dead bodies. Hearing this, Professor Harid immediately dropped his earlier playful attitude and tried to calm the students. Prepare yourselves. This is the dungeon of the hero. Professor Sejin, on the other hand, noticed something and pointed in a particular direction. Harid, I see the city walls over there. At these words, everyone turned toward the direction Sejin pointed and discovered a ruined city wall, cracked and weathered. For Leo, this scene was all too familiar. During the era of the disaster, the last line of defense and the final city, Gardaslan's city walls, he muttered under his breath. If this was the right time. Just then, a voice suddenly sounded from behind them. Yes, my unfulfilled wish was indeed foolish, but we will save the world. Leo turned around to face his old teammate and whispered so only he could hear. Lysinas. The girl with black hair smiled faintly, then slowly dissolved into a stream of light. After that, the space around them shattered, and the group was teleported back to the lecture hall. Everything happened so fast that the representative students were completely confused about what had just occurred. Professors, what is going on? Chenxia asked in a panic. In response to the chaos, Professor Harid immediately halted the class and instructed everyone to calm down and quickly leave the classroom. The students, without waiting for further instructions, fled the lecture hall in fear. Only Leo remained, still lost in thought, holding the piece of paper in his hand. It was then that he realized the identity of the paper. This was Kyle's page, the heroic chronicle from his world. Beside him, Professor Harid was staring intently at him, his gaze thoughtful, leaving Leo to wonder what the professor